Winter descended on Ravenwood like a predator, all teeth and claws. Snow fell in sheets so thick the world beyond arm's reach vanished into swirling white oblivion. The wind howled with fury, rattling shutters and slipping icy fingers through every crack in the aged cottages that huddled together as if for warmth. Inside the smallest of these dwellings, firelight danced across the worn wooden floor, casting long shadows that stretched toward Diana Winters as she worked. Diana's hands moved with practiced precision as she ground herbs with a mortar and pestle, her fingers stained green and brown from a day spent preparing remedies. At 32, her face retained a gentle beauty despite the fine lines that had begun to frame her eyes, lines earned through years of worry and quiet suffering. Her auburn hair, streaked with a single band of premature silver, was pulled back in a practical knot, revealing a face marked by both determination and exhaustion. The cottage smelled of pine, dried flowers, and the metallic tang of blood. On a narrow bed against the far wall lay a small boy, no more than 7, his skin pale as the snow outside. 3 days earlier, he had fallen through ice while fishing with his father. The frigid water had claimed his breath, and though they had pulled him out quickly, a vicious fever had taken hold. "Will Sammy live, Mama?" Lily's voice was barely audible above the storm. At 12, Diana's daughter had already seen more of life's cruelties than most children twice her age. She sat cross-legged by the hearth, sorting dried lavender with the meticulous care Diana had taught her. Diana did not offer false reassurances. Never that. "His fever broke an hour ago. The worst has passed." She moved to the boy's side, placing a cool cloth on his forehead. Beneath her palm, she felt the quiet hum of her gift, the ability to sense life's flickering flame, and sometimes to coax it back from the brink of extinguishment. It was this power that had earned her the whispers: witch, sorceress, healer. Diana closed her eyes, channeling warmth into her fingertips. The boy sighed in his sleep, color returning to his cheeks as Diana's touch spread healing energy through his small frame. This gift had been both blessing and curse. It had saved countless lives in Ravenwood, yet it had also cost her nearly everything. Her husband Thomas, dead these 5 years under suspicious circumstances. Her standing in the community, forever tainted by fear and superstition. Her security, perpetually threatened by her brother-in-law's covetous gaze. The cottage door burst open with a gust of frigid air, breaking Diana's concentration. Thaddeus Blake, the blacksmith's son, stood in the threshold, snow melting in his dark beard, eyes wild with urgency. "Mistress Winters," he panted, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Governor Hammond demands your presence at the town square, now." Diana straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sammy needs watching. His parents? Still trapped by the storm in the North Valley." Thaddeus shifted uncomfortably. "Governor said immediately. He sent men." Through the open door, Diana glimpsed 2 of Hammond's guards waiting on horseback, their cloaks heavy with snow, faces grim beneath their helmets. "What does my dear brother-in-law want that cannot wait until morning?" Diana's voice carried an edge that made Thaddeus wince. "They caught something in the highlands. Something not natural." His voice dropped to a whisper. "A man, but not a man. Governor says you'll know what to do with it." Diana's heart tightened. The last time Hammond had found something not natural, an old woman had burned at the stake for the crime of having 6 fingers on one hand. Lily appeared at her side, small fingers clutching Diana's skirt. "I'm coming too," the girl said, her young face set with determination that mirrored her mother's. Diana started to object, then thought better of it. Leaving Lily alone with Hammond's men nearby was unthinkable. "Very well. Thaddeus, stay with Sammy. If he wakes, give him the tea on the table. 3 sips only. Lily, your warmest cloak." As they stepped into the howling storm, Diana felt a familiar dread settling in her stomach. Governor Hammond never called for her unless something terrible was about to happen, and somehow she always found herself standing between him and his cruelty, a position that grew more dangerous with each passing year. The town square of Ravenwood had been transformed by the blizzard into something ancient and terrible, a place of judgment carved from ice and shadow. Torches fought valiantly against the darkness, their flames writhing in the wind. Nearly 100 people had gathered despite the storm, their faces illuminated in brief, grotesque flashes. They huddled in small groups, breath fogging in the bitter cold, voices hushed as if in the presence of something holy or damned. Diana kept Lily close, moving through the crowd with practiced indifference to the whispers that followed. Witch, widow, whore. The words had long ago lost their power to wound her deeply. She had built armor from necessity, learning to walk with her head high among those who feared what they did not understand. At the center of the square stood a wooden platform, normally used for market day announcements and occasional public punishments. Tonight, it had become something far more sinister. Governor Hammond stood upon it in his finest coat of black wool trimmed with silver fox fur, his broad shoulders dusted with snow, his beard meticulously groomed despite the late hour and foul weather. At 45, he remained a handsome man, though his good looks had hardened into something predatory with time and power. But it was not Hammond who drew the collective gaze of Ravenwood. It was the prisoner. Chains thick as a man's wrist bound him to a sturdy post. Even kneeling, his head bowed, he towered over Hammond. His clothes, once fine by the look of their tattered remains, hung in bloodied strips that revealed glimpses of a body mapped with wounds both fresh and healing. His black hair fell forward, obscuring his face, but there was a coiled power in the set of his shoulders that reminded Diana of a caged wolf. Hammond's voice cut through the wind, practiced and theatrical. "Good people of Ravenwood, I apologize for calling you from your hearths on such a night, but some matters cannot wait till dawn." He paced the platform with measured steps, every movement calculated to project authority. 3 nights ago, a patrol from the King's Guard was slaughtered 5 miles north of our border. 8 men, torn apart as if by some wild beast. He paused, allowing the murmurs of horror to ripple through the crowd. But not by any natural creature, no. The tracks they followed led them to this man. Hammond grabbed a fistful of the prisoner's hair, yanking his head up so the crowd could see his face. A collective gasp rose from the gathered townsfolk. Diana felt her own breath catch in her throat. The prisoner's face, though bruised and streaked with blood, possessed a fierce, almost aristocratic beauty. High cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, and a mouth set in a line of quiet defiance. But it was his eyes that held Diana transfixed, blue as a winter sky, clear as mountain ice, and burning with an intelligence that belied Hammond's portrayal of him as a mindless beast. Those eyes swept across the crowd with cold assessment, revealing neither fear nor remorse. When they found Diana, they paused, narrowing slightly as if in recognition, though she was certain they had never met. Something passed between them in that moment, a current of understanding that made her shiver in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "This creature was found covered in our soldiers' blood," Hammond continued. "Speaking in the foul tongue of the Highland clans, we caught him shifting between forms, man and beast." The crowd erupted in fearful exclamations. Stories of the Highland shapeshifters had terrorized children in Ravenwood for generations, tales of savage warriors who could take the form of wolves, preying on good folk who strayed too far from civilization. Liar. The word, spoken in a deep voice roughened by thirst and pain, silenced the square instantly. The prisoner stared directly at Hammond, contempt evident in every line of his body. "Your men attacked our delegation under a flag of truce. I alone survived." Hammond struck him across the face with a gloved hand. "Silence! You'll not spread your Highland lies here." He turned back to the crowd, his face flushed with anger. "Tomorrow at dawn, this creature will face execution for his crimes against the kingdom." "And what crimes would those be?" Diana's voice rang out before she could think better of it. Heads turned, faces registering shock at her audacity. Hammond's expression darkened dangerously. "Mistress Winters, how kind of you to join us." Hammond's tone dripped with false courtesy. "I summoned you to examine the beast, not question the crown's justice." Diana stepped forward, suddenly aware of how the crowd had parted to leave her exposed. "You called me here as a healer, yet speak of execution. Which service do you actually require, Governor?" Hammond's smile widened. "You see, even our esteemed healer confirms this is no ordinary man." He turned to the crowd with theatrical gravity. "For the safety of Ravenwood, I propose to execute this Highland creature at dawn, unless—" He paused, a predatory glint in his eye. "Someone wishes to claim responsibility for him under our ancient laws." The square fell silent. Diana understood the trap immediately. Hammond was offering an impossible choice: claim the prisoner and become accountable for any destruction he might cause, or allow an execution that increasingly felt like murder. "No takers?" Hammond laughed coldly. "I thought not. Dawn it is, then." "Wait." The single word escaped Diana's lips before she could reconsider. "The ancient laws also allow for purchase of prisoners of war for restitution, do they not?" Hammond's smile faltered slightly. "They do, though I hardly think—" "What is the price?" Diana interrupted, heart pounding. The crowd stirred, murmuring in surprise and speculation. Hammond recovered quickly, his expression calculating. For a creature that slaughtered 8 of the king's men, 20 silver would be merciful. An impossible sum, more than most in Ravenwood saw in a year. Diana stood her ground. "You said examine him, not listen to tales. I saw no evidence that this man killed anyone." 10 silver, then," Hammond countered, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "Out of respect for my late brother's wife." Diana reached into the pouch at her waist, feeling the weight of the only coins she possessed. Payment for 3 months of healing work, meant to see her and Lily through the harsh winter. 2 silver pieces, earned through countless hours of labor. 2 silver is all I have," she said, holding the coins up for all to see. "According to the law, if no higher bid is offered, you must accept." Hammond's face darkened with fury, though he maintained his public smile. 2 silver for a Highland beast? You would waste good money on our enemy?" "I see a wounded man who deserves a chance to defend himself properly," Diana replied steadily. "Does the law stand, Governor Hammond, or does your word bend when inconvenient?" A dangerous silence fell. Diana had publicly challenged Hammond's honor, a risky move, but one that left him little room to maneuver without losing face before his people. The law was clear, and all present knew it. "Very well," Hammond finally said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. 2 silver coins for the Highland dog." He snatched the money from Diana's outstretched hand with barely controlled violence. "But mark my words, sister. When this beast turns on you in your sleep, you'll find no help from me or mine." Diana ignored the threat, turning instead to the prisoner. His eyes had never left her face during the exchange, and in them she saw something unexpected. Not gratitude, but a wary respect, as if he were reassessing everything he thought he knew about her. Hammond gestured sharply to his guards. "Release him to his new mistress." The guards approached reluctantly, one keeping a sword pointed at the prisoner's throat, while the other unlocked his shackles. As the heavy iron fell away, revealing raw, bleeding wrists, Diana saw the prisoner's muscles tense. For one heart-stopping moment, she feared he might actually attack, proving Hammond right. Instead, he slowly rose to his full height, towering over everyone on the platform, his presence suddenly filling the space with coiled power despite his injuries. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as they truly took in his size for the first time. Even Hammond took an instinctive step backward. Diana held her ground, refusing to show fear. "Can you walk?" she asked quietly. The prisoner nodded once, his face betraying the pain the simple movement caused him. When he took his first step, his leg nearly buckled beneath him, but he caught himself with grim determination. Diana turned to the crowd, raising her voice to be heard above the rising wind. "This man is now under my protection by ancient law. Any who harm him answer to the same law." She fixed Hammond with a pointed stare. "I trust that's understood." Without waiting for a response, she descended the stairs, gesturing for the prisoner to follow. Lily ran to her side, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. The crowd parted before them, some making signs to ward off evil, others simply watching in stunned silence as the unlikely trio made their way out of the square. "Have you lost your mind, Mama?" Lily whispered fiercely as they walked. "That's a Highland warrior!" "Not now, Lily," Diana murmured, acutely aware of the massive presence following them through the snow. Every step away from the square felt like escaping a noose, yet Diana harbored no illusions about the danger she had just invited into their lives. Hammond would not forgive this public defiance, and the prisoner himself remained an unknown quantity, potentially more dangerous than anything Hammond could devise. The blizzard had intensified during the town gathering, snow now falling so thickly that Diana could barely make out her own cottage as they approached. The wind cut through her cloak like knives, and she worried that the prisoner, with his tattered clothing, must be near freezing. Yet he made no complaint, following in silence, leaving a trail of blood-spotted snow in his wake. Once inside the small cottage, the sudden absence of the howling wind created an illusion of peace that did nothing to ease the tension. Thaddeus leapt to his feet at their entrance, hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt, when he saw the Highland prisoner ducking through the low doorway. "Mistress Winters?" he questioned, eyes wide with alarm. "It's all right, Thaddeus," Diana said calmly, though she felt anything but calm. "How is Sammy?" "Sleeping peaceful. His breathing stronger." Thaddeus couldn't take his eyes off the prisoner, who stood motionless just inside the door, steam rising from his wet clothes, blue eyes surveying the cottage with calculating intensity. "Good. Thank you for staying with him. You should go home now. Your father will be worried." Thaddeus hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Diana and Lily alone with the prisoner. "Are you certain?" "Quite certain," Diana replied firmly. "This man is injured and needs treatment. I've paid his bond. He's my responsibility now." After another moment of indecision, Thaddeus nodded reluctantly. "If you're sure." He edged past the prisoner with obvious discomfort. "I'll come check on you in the morning," he added, the statement sounding more like a promise than an offer. Once Thaddeus had gone, Diana faced her new charge directly. "You need to sit before you fall." She gestured to a wooden chair near the hearth. "Lily, fetch clean water and bandages." The prisoner didn't move immediately, his gaze sweeping the small cottage again, lingering on the sleeping boy, the herbs hanging from the rafters, the single window with its sturdy shutters. Diana recognized the assessment of a warrior evaluating both threats and escape routes. Finally, he moved to the offered chair, lowering himself with a barely suppressed groan of pain. Closer to the firelight, Diana could see how truly dire his condition was. What she had taken for dirt on his face was mostly bruising, one eye swollen nearly shut. His breathing was labored, suggesting broken ribs or worse internal damage, and the strange silver-black veins she had noticed on the platform seemed to be spreading visibly beneath his skin. Lily returned with a basin of water and clean cloths. The girl kept a wary distance from their guest, her eyes huge in her pale face. "My name is Diana Winters," Diana said as she began to clean the blood from the prisoner's face. "This is my daughter Lily. We live alone here. I am a healer, as you've guessed." The prisoner watched her work, his good eye tracking every movement of her hands. For a long moment, he said nothing, and Diana wondered if he understood her at all. Then, in a voice roughened by thirst and disuse, he spoke in heavily accented common speech. "Balthazar." The single word seemed to cost him great effort. "My name is Balthazar." "Balthazar," Diana repeated, testing the name. "I need to remove what's left of your shirt to treat your wounds properly." He nodded once, wincing as she carefully cut away the tattered remains of what had once been fine cloth. As the fabric fell away, both Diana and Lily gasped involuntarily. Balthazar's torso was a battlefield of old scars and fresh wounds, but it was the strange marking on his left shoulder that drew their attention. An intricate spiral design that seemed burned into the flesh, the source of the silver-black veins that now spread across nearly half his chest. "What is this?" Diana asked, touching the edge of the marking carefully. A jolt of cold energy surged up her arm, making her fingers tingle painfully. Balthazar's eyes met hers, something like surprise flickering in their icy depths. "You feel it," he said. Not a question, but a realization. The curse. "Curse?" Lily echoed, moving closer despite her earlier caution, curiosity overcoming fear. Balthazar's gaze shifted to the girl, then back to Diana. "Royal wizard, poisoned chalice, peace talks." His broken speech painted a grim picture, even with so few words. "My pack, all dead. Only I lived." Diana dipped a cloth in the water and began cleaning his wounds with gentle efficiency, her mind racing. Highland packs were the stuff of fireside tales in Ravenwood, fierce clans of shapeshifters who lived in the distant mountains, occasionally raiding border settlements. They were always portrayed as savages, barely human, yet the man before her spoke with the dignity of nobility despite his broken common speech. "You came here for peace talks?" she asked, applying a poultice to a particularly deep cut on his arm. Balthazar nodded grimly. "King invited. Offered truce." His mouth twisted bitterly. "Trap." A cold shiver ran down Diana's spine. If what he said was true, then the king, or someone close to him, had violated one of the most sacred tenets of diplomacy. Such treachery would justify war, especially to the honor-bound Highland clans. "And this curse," Diana pressed, gesturing to the spreading silver-black veins, "binds my wolf." Balthazar placed a hand over his heart, his expression darkening. "Cannot control shift. Full moon comes." He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. When the full moon rose, he would transform completely, unable to maintain his human form. Diana glanced toward the small window. The storm clouds had briefly parted, revealing a waxing moon, nearly full. 3 days at most before the transformation he feared. As if reading her thoughts, Balthazar fixed her with an intense stare. "Why help me? You know what I am." Diana continued her methodical treatment of his wounds, buying time to consider her answer. Why had she helped him? Compassion, certainly. She had never been able to turn away from suffering. Defiance of Hammond, whose casual cruelty had gone unchecked too long. But there was something more, something she couldn't quite name, a pull toward this stranger that defied rational explanation. "I help those who need helping," she said finally. "It's what I do." Balthazar studied her face, clearly searching for deception. Finding none, he nodded slowly. "Dangerous choice. I've made many of those." Diana's hands moved to his ribs, probing gently. "These are broken. I need to bind them." As she worked, a fragile trust began to form between them. Healer and patient, human and wolf, 2 souls united by circumstances neither could have foreseen. Lily gradually lost her fear, helping Diana prepare more poultices and bandages, occasionally asking Balthazar careful questions about the Highlands that he answered in his halting, limited common speech. By the time Diana had treated the worst of his wounds, the storm outside had abated somewhat, and Balthazar's breathing came easier. The silver-black veins, however, continued their slow, inexorable spread. "You should rest," Diana said, cleaning her hands in a fresh basin of water. "You can take my bed. Lily and I will—" "No," Balthazar interrupted firmly. "Floor, near door." At Diana's questioning look, he elaborated with difficulty. "Safer, for you, if I change." The implication hung in the air between them. Even injured, Balthazar recognized the danger he posed to the woman who had saved him and her child. He would place himself between them and any threat, including himself. Diana nodded, understanding. "Very well, I'll make a pallet for you there." As she and Lily prepared a makeshift bed of blankets near the door, Diana found herself wondering what would happen when dawn came. Hammond would not simply forget her defiance. And then there was the curse, a magical affliction she had no experience treating. She was swimming in waters far too deep, with currents that could pull them all under. Yet watching Balthazar lower himself painfully onto the pallet, his proud face set in lines of exhaustion and determination, Diana couldn't bring herself to regret her choice. Something important had been set in motion this night. She could feel it in her bones, in the strange tingling that remained in her fingers after touching the cursed mark, in the way Balthazar's ice-blue eyes followed her movements with a mixture of wariness and growing respect. "Sleep now," she told him, covering him with an extra blanket. "We're safe for tonight, at least." Balthazar caught her wrist as she turned to go, his touch surprisingly gentle despite his strength. "Thank you," he said simply, the words carrying the weight of a solemn vow. Diana nodded once, then moved away to check on Sammy, who still slept peacefully, his fever broken. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but within the small cottage, an uneasy peace had settled, fragile as new ice on a winter pond, and perhaps just as dangerous. Diana knew they balanced on the edge of something momentous. Hammond's wrath, Balthazar's curse, her own unacknowledged power, any one of these could shatter their lives beyond repair. Yet as she settled beside Lily on their shared bed, pulling her daughter close, Diana found a strange certainty growing within her. Whatever dawn brought, they would face it together, the healer, the wolf, and the child. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something like destiny shifting into place, as if the 3 of them had been moving toward this convergence all along, guided by forces beyond their understanding or control. With that unsettling thought, Diana closed her eyes, surrendering to exhaustion. Her last conscious awareness was of Balthazar's steady gaze from across the room, watchful, protective, and filled with questions that matched her own. The cottage fell silent, save for the crackling fire and the soft breathing of its occupants, while outside, the moon played hide-and-seek with storm clouds, its light occasionally breaking through to cast silver shadows across the snow-covered world. In 3 days, it would reach fullness, bringing with it a transformation that would change everything. But that was a worry for tomorrow. Tonight they rested, healer and wolf, human and not quite human, bound together by choices that could not be unmade, and a future that had suddenly become as wild and unpredictable as the Highland Mountains themselves. Dawn broke reluctantly over Ravenwood, pale light filtering through lingering clouds. The storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed world of pristine white drifts and ice-jeweled trees. Inside Diana's cottage, the fire had burned down to embers, casting the room in dim, red-tinged shadows. Diana woke suddenly, heart pounding from a dream she couldn't quite remember, something about running through moonlit forests, pursued by shadows with silver eyes. She sat up, instinctively checking on Lily, who still slept soundly beside her. Then her gaze moved to the pallet by the door. Empty. For one terrible moment, Diana thought Balthazar had fled, taking her compassion for weakness. Then she saw him. He stood at the window, a massive silhouette against the gray morning light, looking out at the snow-covered village with the stillness of a predator. The bandages she had applied the night before stood out starkly against his skin, but he moved with marginally more ease, suggesting her treatments had helped somewhat. Sensing her gaze, Balthazar turned. In the cold light of dawn, his face appeared more angular, more inhuman somehow. The silver-black veins had spread further during the night, now visible at the edge of his jawline. "Your governor," he said quietly, his common speech slightly improved after a night's rest. "He comes, with men." Diana rose quickly, pulling on her boots and moving to the window. Through the frost-edged glass, she could see Hammond approaching, flanked by 6 guards. Their breath clouded in the frigid air as they marched through the knee-deep snow, determination evident in every step. "He means to take you back," Diana said, mind racing. "Or worse." Balthazar's expression hardened. "I will not go, but—" He hesitated, glancing at the still sleeping forms of Lily and Sammy. "I will not bring blood to your home." The implication was clear. If Hammond forced the issue, Balthazar would fight, and people would die. Diana had no doubt the Highland warrior, even injured, could kill several men before being overwhelmed. The thought sent ice through her veins. "This is my problem to solve," she said firmly. "Stay inside, away from the window. Let me handle Hammond." Skepticism flashed across Balthazar's face, but after a moment's consideration, he nodded once and moved back into the shadows of the cottage. Diana smoothed her dress, squared her shoulders, and stepped outside to meet her brother-in-law. The cold hit her like a physical blow, but Diana refused to shiver as she stood on her small porch, arms crossed, watching Hammond and his men approach. Fresh snow crunched beneath their boots, the only sound in the winter stillness. Hammond stopped a few paces from her door, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Despite the early hour, he was impeccably dressed in a fur-lined coat, his beard neatly trimmed, his eyes cold with calculation. "Good morning, Diana," he said with false pleasantry. "I trust you survived the night with your purchase." As you can see, Diana kept her voice neutral, though every instinct screamed danger. "What brings the governor to my humble door so early?" Hammond's smile did not reach his eyes. "Concern for a valued member of our community, of course. The Highland dog didn't trouble you?" "Balthazar is recovering from his injuries," Diana replied evenly. "Injuries sustained while in your custody, I might add." Hammond's smile tightened. "Balthazar, is it? Already on familiar terms with the beast?" He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You've made a grave mistake, sister. That creature is dangerous, an enemy of the crown. I've come to rectify the situation before innocent blood is spilled." "The law was clear," Diana countered. "I paid his bond. He belongs to me until that debt is satisfied. Laws can be reinterpreted." Hammond gestured subtly, and his men spread out, surrounding the small cottage. "Especially when public safety is concerned." Diana felt cold fear spreading through her chest, but kept her expression impassive. "And what will the town think when you violate ancient law to persecute your brother's widow? What message does that send about your respect for our traditions?" Hammond's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Do not test me, Diana. My patience has limits." Before Diana could respond, the cottage door opened behind her. Balthazar stepped out, ducking his head to clear the low doorframe. Despite his injuries, he radiated a primal power that made Hammond's guards reach instinctively for their weapons. "This woman," Balthazar said carefully, each word precise despite his accent, "saved my life, paid my bond. By your own law, I serve her until debt cleared." He drew himself up to his full, impressive height. "Touch her, and I forget your law." Hammond's face flushed with anger, but Diana saw the flash of fear in his eyes as he took in Balthazar's imposing presence. Even wounded, the Highland warrior projected lethal capability. For a tense moment, violence seemed inevitable. Then Hammond forced a cold laugh. "Very well. Keep your pet wolf, Diana, but remember, the full moon comes in 3 nights. When he transforms completely and slaughters you in your sleep, I will personally lead the hunt to put him down." He turned to his men. "Stand down. It seems my sister-in-law prefers wild beasts to civilized company these days." As Hammond and his guards trudged back through the snow, Diana released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Beside her, Balthazar remained tense, watching Hammond's retreat with predatory focus. "He will return," Balthazar said quietly. "Yes," Diana agreed, "and next time he won't bother with pretense." She turned to face Balthazar fully, struck again by the otherworldly quality of his blue eyes and the advancing silver-black veins that now traced visible patterns along his neck. "The curse is spreading faster," she observed. "We need to understand it if we're to have any hope of reversing it." Balthazar touched the mark on his shoulder, his expression grim. "Royal Wizard called it silver chain, keeps wolf form from controlling shift by full moon." He trailed off, the implication clear. By the full moon, he would be trapped in wolf form, possibly forever. "There must be books, scrolls, something that could help us understand this magic," Diana said, mind already turning to possibilities. "Lily and I will need to visit Elspeth." "Elspeth?" "An old woman who lives at the edge of the forest. She was the village healer before me, taught me much of what I know." Diana hesitated. "Some call her witch, others wise woman. She has knowledge of the old ways that might help us understand your curse." Balthazar nodded slowly. "I come with you." Diana shook her head firmly. "Too dangerous. Hammond has men watching. Besides, you need rest to heal." She saw the protest forming on his lips and added, "This is still my town, Balthazar. I know how to move through it unseen when necessary. Trust me in this." Their eyes locked in silent battle of wills. Finally, Balthazar inclined his head slightly. "Be careful," he said, the simple phrase carrying unexpected weight. Diana felt an odd warmth spread through her chest at his concern. "Always," she replied. Inside the cottage, they found Lily already awake and tending to Sammy, who had improved enough to sit up and take some broth. The boy's eyes widened in fear when he saw Balthazar, but Lily had apparently explained the situation in her own way. "Mama saved a Highland wolf man," Sammy whispered with a mixture of awe and terror when Diana checked his temperature. "I saved a wounded man," Diana corrected gently, "who happens to come from the Highlands." "Can he really turn into a wolf?" the boy asked, eyes huge in his pale face. Diana hesitated, aware of Balthazar watching the exchange from across the room. "Some people have gifts that others don't understand," she said carefully, "like my healing. It doesn't make them monsters." Sammy considered this with childish seriousness, then nodded. "Like how people call you witch sometimes, but you're not." Diana smiled, touched by the simple wisdom. "Exactly like that." After ensuring Sammy was well enough to return home, Diana bundled him up and asked Lily to take him to his parents, using the opportunity to whisper instructions to her daughter about meeting her at Elspeth's cottage afterward. Lily, bright and perceptive as always, understood the unspoken urgency in her mother's voice and nodded solemnly. Alone with Balthazar, Diana began gathering herbs and small bottles into a leather satchel. "I need to check your wounds again before I go," she said, approaching him with fresh bandages. Balthazar submitted to her examination silently, his eyes following her movements with that same intense focus. As Diana's fingers carefully probed the edges of the curse mark, she felt that now familiar jolt of energy. But this time, something new happened. A brief flash of vision, gone almost before she could register it. Mountains shrouded in mist, a massive stone fortress, wolves running beneath a full moon. Diana gasped, pulling her hand back as if burned. Balthazar caught her wrist, his grip firm but not painful. "You saw something," he said, not a question but a certainty. Diana nodded, unsettled by the experience. Mountains, a fortress, wolves running. Balthazar's expression shifted, surprise and something like hope flickering across his features. "My home," he said quietly. "You saw Wolfcrag Keep." "Crag. How is that possible?" Diana whispered. "The curse links to my blood, my memories." Balthazar studied her with new intensity. No ordinary human could see such things. Diana pulled her hand free, suddenly uncomfortable under his scrutinizing gaze. "I'm just a healer." "No." Balthazar's voice held absolute conviction. "You are more, much more." Before Diana could respond to this unsettling declaration, a sound from outside caught their attention, the crunch of approaching footsteps in snow. Balthazar moved to the window with silent grace, peering cautiously through frost-covered glass. "Child returns," he reported, running, afraid. Diana rushed to the door, throwing it open just as Lily reached the porch, her face flushed with cold and exertion, eyes wide with fear. "Mama!" she gasped. "The governor's men! They're arresting Elspeth! They're saying she's a witch!" Cold dread washed over Diana. Hammond was striking at her allies, removing potential sources of help, and if he had arrested Elspeth as a witch, "He'll come for us next," she whispered, the realization crystallizing with terrible clarity. Behind her, Balthazar's voice rumbled with quiet certainty. "Then we must not be here when he comes." Diana turned to face him, seeing her own conclusion mirrored in his ice-blue eyes. They had perhaps hours before Hammond returned with more men and fewer pretenses. Their time in Ravenwood had run out. "We need to leave," Diana agreed, the words both terrifying and oddly liberating. "But where can we go?" Balthazar straightened to his full height, the silver-black veins on his neck catching the morning light. "To my people," he said simply, "in the Highlands." The moment hung between them, a choice that would change everything. Stay and face Hammond's escalating persecution, or flee into the unknown with a man who was not entirely human, cursed to transform completely in 3 days' time. Diana looked at Lily, seeing both fear and determination in her daughter's young face. Then back to Balthazar, the Highland Alpha, whose fate had become inexplicably entwined with her own. 3 days until the full moon. 3 days to find answers. 3 days that would determine all their futures. "How far?" she asked. 2 days' journey. Hard travel through forest and mountain. Diana nodded once, decision made. "We'll need supplies, warm clothes, my medicines." Her mind was already cataloging essentials, calculating what they could reasonably carry. Lily's voice, small but steady, broke into her thoughts. "What about Sammy's family, and Thaddeus, and everyone else who needs your help?" The question struck Diana like a physical blow. For 15 years, she had been Ravenwood's healer, tending to every illness and injury, bringing new life into the world, easing the passage of the dying. To leave now felt like abandonment. Balthazar seemed to sense her inner conflict. "Hammond gives you no choice," he said quietly. "Stay, and you burn as witch." The brutal truth of his words cut through Diana's hesitation. Hammond had been looking for an excuse to eliminate her for years. The independent widow who held too much influence, who reminded the town of his brother's mysterious death. Now, with her public defiance and harboring of a Highland beast, he had all the justification he needed. "We leave at nightfall," Diana decided, her voice steadier than she felt. "Lily, help me gather only what we absolutely need. Balthazar, you should rest while you can. The journey will be hard, especially with your injuries." As they worked through the day, preparing for their flight, Diana felt a strange sense of inevitability settling over her. Last night's impulsive act of compassion had set them on a path that now seemed predestined, as if all her life had been leading to this moment of decision, this journey into unknown territory with a Highland Alpha whose curse had awakened something long dormant within her. By the time darkness fell, they were ready. 3 packs containing only essentials, warm clothes layered against the bitter Highland cold, and a desperate plan to slip away while Hammond's attention was focused on Elspeth's public interrogation in the town square. As Diana took one last look around the cottage that had been her home since marriage, she felt a curious mixture of grief and anticipation. They were leaving behind everything familiar, venturing into danger with only the fragile trust between them as protection. Yet somehow, standing between Lily and Balthazar in the gathering darkness, Diana felt more certain than she had in years. Whatever awaited them in the Highland Mountains, be it answers, danger, or destiny, They would face it together. The first step into the snow-covered night felt like crossing an invisible threshold. There would be no turning back now. Ahead lay the dark forest, the distant mountains, and the promise of truth about the curse that bound them all together in ways none of them yet fully understood. The forest swallowed them whole. Diana looked back once as they crested the first ridge beyond Ravenwood, watching the village lights grow distant, like stars falling away beneath a rising tide. Snow had begun falling again, erasing their tracks almost as quickly as they made them. A small mercy. Hammond would not be able to follow immediately, though Diana harbored no illusions about his persistence. By morning, he would have trackers combing the forest. Balthazar moved ahead of them, his massive frame cutting a path through the deepening snow. Despite his injuries, he navigated the darkened woods with uncanny precision, occasionally pausing to scent the air, like the wolf he partly was. Diana followed closely behind, one hand gripping Lily's, the other clutching her staff. The night pressed around them, alive with sounds that set her nerves on edge. The crack of branches beneath snow's weight, the distant howl of what might be wind or wolf, the constant whisper of falling snow. "How much farther tonight?" Diana asked as they paused briefly at a frozen stream. Her breath clouded in the frigid air, and beside her, Lily swayed with exhaustion. Balthazar studied the sky, where breaks in the clouds revealed a waxing moon, nearly full. His face tightened as he gazed at it, the silver-black veins along his jaw pulsing faintly. "Ridge ahead. Old Hunter's cabin. Safe for tonight." Diana nodded, adjusting the pack on her shoulders. They had traveled for hours already, the forest growing denser and wilder with each passing mile. Lily had not complained once, but Diana could see fatigue etched in every line of her daughter's small body. "Just a bit further," she encouraged, squeezing Lily's hand. The girl nodded bravely, though her face was pale with cold and exhaustion. Balthazar's eyes lingered on the child, something softening in his stern features. Without warning, he knelt before Lily. "Climb on," he said simply. Lily hesitated, looking to Diana uncertainly. "It's all right," Diana said, surprised by the unexpected kindness. "Balthazar is stronger than he looks, even injured." After another moment's hesitation, Lily climbed onto Balthazar's broad back. He rose easily despite his wounds, securing the child with one massive arm while she clung to his shoulders. With his other hand, he took some of the weight from Diana's pack, lifting it as if it weighed nothing. "Thank you," Diana said quietly, touched by the gesture. Balthazar merely nodded and continued forward, his stride barely slowed by the additional burden. Diana followed, watching the unlikely pair ahead of her, her daughter riding on the back of a Highland Alpha, a man most in Ravenwood believed to be more beast than human. Yet in that moment, he showed more humanity than Hammond ever had. The cabin appeared like a ghost through the falling snow, a simple structure of logs and stone nearly buried in white. Balthazar approached cautiously, lowering Lily to the ground and motioning for them to wait while he circled the perimeter. Diana held her breath, one hand on the knife hidden in her belt, the other wrapped protectively around Lily's shoulders. After what felt like an eternity, Balthazar returned, nodding once. Empty, long abandoned. Relief washed through Diana as they entered the small cabin. It was a simple one-room structure with a stone fireplace, dusty furs scattered across the floor, and rough wooden furniture that had seen better days. But it was shelter from the storm and hidden from pursuing eyes, exactly what they needed. Balthazar worked quickly to light a fire while Diana unpacked essential supplies. Lily, revived somewhat by the prospect of warmth and rest, helped arrange their sleeping area near the hearth. By the time orange flames were licking at the dried wood, casting long shadows across the cabin walls, a semblance of comfort had been established in the abandoned hunter's refuge. Diana unwrapped bread, dried meat, and a small flask of honey mead she had brought from home. They ate in silence, the reality of their situation settling over them like the snow outside. Exiles from Ravenwood, fugitives traveling with a cursed Highland warrior, racing against the inexorable approach of the full moon. Lily fell asleep almost immediately after eating, curled beneath Diana's cloak near the fire. Diana watched her daughter's peaceful face for a long moment, wondering if she had made the right choice in bringing her on this dangerous journey. But leaving her behind would have been worse. Hammond would have used the child against her without hesitation. "She is strong," Balthazar said quietly from across the fire, "like her mother." Diana looked up, surprised by both the observation and the improvement in his speech. His command of the common tongue seemed to be strengthening by the hour, as if some dormant knowledge was awakening within him. "She has to be," Diana replied. "Life hasn't been kind to either of us since Thomas died." Balthazar studied her with those penetrating blue eyes. "Your husband, how did he die?" Diana stared into the flames, old pain surfacing. "Hunting accident, according to Hammond. Thomas's body was found at the bottom of a ravine, neck broken." She looked up, meeting Balthazar's gaze directly. But there were marks on his throat, marks Hammond claimed were from branches during the fall. Understanding dawned in Balthazar's expression. "You believe otherwise." Thomas and Hammond argued violently the night before the hunt, over me, over property that should have been ours by right. The next day, Thomas was dead, and Hammond became my guardian as his brother's widow. Diana's voice hardened. "He's controlled everything since. My home, my livelihood, even my movement outside the village. Until now." Balthazar nodded slowly, the firelight casting his face in stark relief, emphasizing the spreading silver-black veins that now covered nearly half his features. "Hammond is a predator in human skin. My kind at least show our true nature." The observation drew an unexpected smile from Diana. "True enough." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the moan of wind outside. After a while, Diana remembered her purpose and reached for her satchel, withdrawing a small book bound in worn leather. "I've been trying to find anything that might help understand your curse," she said, opening the book to reveal pages covered in handwritten notes and drawings of herbs and symbols. "This was Elspeth's gift to me when I became Ravenwood's healer. Her knowledge of old magic might give us some insight." Balthazar moved closer, his massive frame casting a shadow over the small book as he peered at the unfamiliar script. "What does it say about curses?" Diana turned several pages before finding what she sought. Here, Silver Chain, a binding curse of the Royal College, designed to contain creatures of dual nature, preventing the shift between forms. She looked up at Balthazar. "This must be what the royal wizard used on you." Balthazar touched the mark on his shoulder, wincing as the silver-black veins pulsed beneath his fingers. "Can it be broken?" Diana continued reading, her expression growing troubled. "It says the curse binds the victim's soul to their human form, but the strain grows with each passing day. By the full moon's peak, the binding shatters violently, forcing a complete transformation." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "After that, the victim remains in beast form, the human consciousness slowly fading until only the animal remains." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. If they couldn't break the curse before the full moon, Balthazar would be lost, transformed permanently into a wolf with no memory of his human self. "There must be a way to reverse it," Diana said, refusing to accept defeat. She turned more pages, searching frantically for answers. "And if there is not?" Balthazar asked quietly. Diana looked up, seeing resignation in his eyes that broke her heart. "There is," she insisted. "There has to be." Balthazar's gaze shifted to Lily's sleeping form, then back to Diana. "If I change completely, if the human mind is lost—" He paused, his expression grave. "You must kill me, before I harm either of you." "No," Diana said immediately, the word coming out more forcefully than she intended. "I didn't save you from Hammond only to execute you myself." "Better your mercy than what I might do without human conscience," Balthazar replied, his voice low and intense. "Promise me, Diana, for your daughter's safety if nothing else." Diana wanted to refuse, to deny the possibility that this proud, honorable man could become a mindless beast. But she saw the fear behind his stoic expression, not fear for himself, but for what he might do to others, to her and Lily. It was that selfless concern that finally swayed her. "I promise," she whispered, "but it won't come to that. We'll find a way." Balthazar nodded once, seemingly satisfied with her word. "Now rest. Tomorrow's journey is harder. Through Blackwood Vale, dangerous territory even for my kind." Diana wanted to continue searching the book, to find answers before exhaustion claimed her, but her body betrayed her. The day's events, the confrontation with Hammond, the flight from Ravenwood, the long trek through snow-covered forest, had drained her completely. She settled beside Lily, pulling her cloak over them both. "What about you?" she asked, noticing Balthazar making no move toward rest. "You need healing sleep more than either of us." Balthazar positioned himself near the cabin's single window, his profile sharp against the night beyond. "I will watch. The curse makes sleep difficult." Diana wanted to object, to insist he rest his wounded body, but something in his posture told her it would be futile. He had assumed the role of protector, and despite his injuries, despite the curse slowly consuming him, he would stand guard through the night. That thought followed Diana into uneasy dreams, of silver wolves running through moonlit forests, of Hammond's cruel smile as flames licked at a pyre, of Balthazar transforming before her eyes, his humanity slipping away like water through cupped hands. Throughout it all, a strange melody seemed to play at the edges of her consciousness, a song she almost recognized but couldn't quite grasp. She woke once in the deepest part of night to find Balthazar still at his post, silhouetted against the window. But something had changed. The silver-black veins had spread further, now covering most of his visible skin, and his posture seemed altered somehow, more animal than man, shoulders hunched, head tilted, as if listening to sounds beyond human hearing. For a moment, Diana felt a flicker of the fear Hammond had tried to instill in her. Then Balthazar turned, sensing her wakefulness, and despite the physical changes wrought by the curse, his eyes remained the same, intelligent, haunted, and unmistakably human. "All is well," he said softly. "Sleep now." Strangely comforted by those simple words, Diana drifted back to sleep, this time without dreams. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through ice-crusted windows. Diana woke to find Lily already up, helping Balthazar pack their few belongings. The Highland warrior looked worse than the night before. The silver-black veins now covered most of his exposed skin, and his movements had taken on a strange, fluid quality that seemed neither fully human nor animal. "We must move quickly," Balthazar said when he noticed Diana watching him. "Hammond's men entered the forest at dawn. I heard their horns." Diana rose immediately, helping gather the last of their supplies. "How far to the Highland border?" "A full day's journey through Blackwood Vale, then up through Moon Pass." Balthazar's expression tightened. "We must cross the border before nightfall tomorrow. The moon will be full." The urgency in his voice spurred them to greater haste. Within minutes they had obliterated all traces of their presence and stepped back into the winter forest. The storm had passed during the night, leaving a pristine white landscape stretching in all directions. Beautiful, but treacherous. Their tracks would be clearly visible to anyone following. Balthazar led them deeper into the forest, where ancient pines grew so closely together that their branches created a natural canopy, preventing much of the snow from reaching the ground. Here, their passage would be harder to track, though the terrain was more difficult to navigate. Lily kept pace bravely, her small face set with determination that made Diana's heart ache with pride and worry. They traveled in tense silence for hours, stopping only briefly to drink from a half-frozen stream or consume small portions of their dwindling supplies. By midday, the character of the forest had changed dramatically, the familiar pines giving way to older, stranger growth. Trees with black bark and twisted forms reached toward a sky barely visible through their gnarled branches. The air felt heavier here, charged with something Diana couldn't quite name. "Blackwood Vale," Balthazar announced grimly. "Ancient place, dangerous." Diana felt it too, a watchful presence in the forest around them, as if the trees themselves observed their passage with ancient, unknowable intelligence. Lily pressed closer to her side, small fingers clutching at Diana's cloak. "What makes it dangerous?" Diana asked, keeping her voice low as if afraid of being overheard. Balthazar paused, scenting the air with that wolf-like tilt of his head. "Old magic. Boundary between realms thins here. Creatures cross over." "Creatures? What kind of creatures?" Lily asked, her voice small but curious despite her fear. Before Balthazar could answer, a sound reached them, distant but distinct. The baying of hounds carried on the still winter air, followed by the faint call of hunting horns. "Hammond?" Diana breathed, fear clutching at her heart. Balthazar nodded grimly. "Trackers, good ones. They move faster than expected." "Can we outrun them?" Diana asked, though she already knew the answer. With Lily's shorter stride and Balthazar's injuries, they couldn't hope to outpace trained hunters with hounds.
"No," Balthazar confirmed, "but we can outsmart them." He surveyed their surroundings with calculating eyes. "This way, quickly."
He led them deeper into Blackwood Vale, the twisted trees growing ever more dense and forbidding. The ground beneath their feet changed from snow-covered earth to strange, spongy moss that seemed to absorb all sound. The air grew warmer, at odds with the winter landscape they had left behind, and mist began to rise from the forest floor, curling around their legs like living tendrils. Diana felt a growing sense of disorientation, as if they were walking not just through a forest, but through the boundary of reality itself. Beside her, Lily's eyes were wide with wonder and fear, taking in the increasingly alien landscape. Ahead, Balthazar moved with greater confidence, as if the strange environment resonated with something in his dual nature. The baying of hounds grew fainter, then disappeared altogether. Whether they had truly escaped their pursuers or simply moved beyond normal hearing range, Diana couldn't tell. The forest had become a place of shadow and whisper, where distance and direction seemed fluid concepts rather than fixed realities. They emerged suddenly into a clearing unlike anything Diana had ever seen. Perfectly circular, ringed by the tallest of the black-barked trees, it contained a pool of water so still it might have been black glass. No ice covered its surface despite the winter season, and no snow fell upon it, though flakes drifted down all around the clearing's edge. Balthazar stopped at the pool's edge, his expression unreadable. "We rest here, briefly." Diana wanted to object. Something about this place raised the fine hairs on her neck, but exhaustion won out over caution. They settled at the edge of the clearing, backs against one of the massive black trees. Diana distributed the last of their bread and dried meat, watching with concern as Balthazar refused his portion. "You need strength," she urged, offering the food again. Balthazar shook his head. "Curse advances. Human food. Less appealing now." His voice had roughened again, the words seeming to require greater effort than before. Diana studied him with growing alarm. The silver-black veins now covered his entire visible skin, and his posture had altered noticeably. Shoulders hunched forward, hands curling slightly as if wanting to become paws. Most disturbing, his eyes had begun to change, the clear blue increasingly rimmed with amber gold. "The curse is accelerating," she said, unable to keep the fear from her voice. "Full moon approaches. Its pull strengthens the wolf." Balthazar turned his increasingly inhuman gaze to the strange pool. "This place amplifies magic, both curse and cure." Diana followed his gaze to the still water. "Cure? You think this pool could help break the curse?" "Not pool itself, but veil is thin here, might reveal answers." Diana set aside her half-eaten food, moving cautiously toward the pool. Its surface remained unnaturally still, reflecting the twisted trees and gray sky with mirror-like perfection. She knelt beside it, some instinct warning her not to touch the water. "What should I do?" she asked, looking back at Balthazar. Before he could answer, a voice spoke from the opposite side of the clearing, a voice Diana recognized with a chill of terror. "You should surrender, dear sister-in-law." Hammond stepped from between the black trees, flanked by 4 armed men. Unlike his guards, who looked nervously at the strange surroundings, Hammond showed no fear of Blackwood Vale's uncanny nature. He moved with the confidence of a man who believed himself master of all he surveyed. "Remarkable how predictable you've become," Hammond said, smiling coldly. "Following the old smuggler's route through Blackwood. Did your beast suggest it, thinking we wouldn't dare follow?" Diana rose slowly, positioning herself between Hammond and Lily. "How did you find us?" "You forget. I've hunted these woods since boyhood, and unlike the superstitious fools in my employ, I don't fear old legends." Hammond's gaze shifted to Balthazar, who had risen to his feet with fluid, predatory grace. "Though I must admit, your pet appears to be transforming nicely. The royal wizard will be pleased to see his curse working so effectively." Balthazar growled, a sound so inhuman it sent shivers down Diana's spine. The silver-black veins across his skin pulsed with unnatural light, and his hands had begun to reshape themselves, fingers lengthening, nails extending into claws. Hammond's men raised their weapons, crossbows loaded with silver-tipped bolts. But Hammond himself appeared unconcerned by Balthazar's partial transformation. "Control your beast, Diana, or my men will put him down where he stands." "What do you want, Hammond?" Diana demanded, desperately trying to buy time, to think of a way out of this trap. Hammond spread his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. Why, to bring you home safely, of course. The village is quite concerned about their healer running off with a Highland monster. His smile turned cruel. Of course the child can return unharmed. You, however, will face charges of witchcraft and treason for aiding an enemy of the crown. And Balthazar? The beast? Hammond's eyes glittered with malice. He belongs to the royal wizard now, a fascinating specimen of Highland magic gone wrong. Diana felt cold fury building within her. Hammond hadn't pursued them out of duty or even vengeance. He was acting as the wizard's agent, hunting Balthazar like a prized animal to be studied and dissected. "We're not going anywhere with you," Diana said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Hammond sighed theatrically. "I expected as much." He gestured to his men. "Take the child first. That should encourage cooperation." The guards moved forward, crossbows trained on Balthazar while two men circled toward Lily. Diana reached for her knife, knowing it would be useless against armed men, but unwilling to surrender without a fight. What happened next occurred so quickly, Diana's mind struggled to process it. Balthazar moved with supernatural speed, placing himself between Lily and the approaching guards. The men fired their crossbows, silver bolts whistling through the air. One missed entirely. The other struck Balthazar in the shoulder, the same shoulder bearing the curse mark. Diana expected him to fall, wounded or worse. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The moment the silver bolt penetrated the curse mark, the silver-black veins across Balthazar's skin flared with blinding light. He roared, a sound of pain and rage that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. The guards stumbled backward, terror replacing professional detachment on their faces. Hammond alone stood his ground, fascination overtaking caution as he watched Balthazar's transformation accelerate. "Remarkable," he murmured. "The silver catalyst works exactly as the wizard predicted." Balthazar fell to his knees, body contorting in agony as the curse magic reacted violently with the silver bolt. Diana rushed to his side, heedless of danger, hands reaching for the embedded arrow. "Don't touch it!" Balthazar gasped, his voice barely recognizable. "Magic. Unstable." Diana ignored his warning, her healer's instincts overriding caution. The moment her fingers contacted the silver bolt, another extraordinary thing happened. Energy surged between them, from the curse mark, through the silver, into Diana's hands. Pain like liquid fire raced up her arms, but with it came something else. Power, ancient and wild, flooding her senses. Visions crashed through her mind. Mountains shrouded in mist, stone circles beneath a full moon, wolves running through primeval forests, and women with silver eyes raising hands to channel moonlight into healing magic. Ancestral memories, not her own, but somehow accessible through the connection with Balthazar's curse. Hammond saw something happening, but misinterpreted entirely. "Seize her!" he commanded his men. "The witch is trying to counter the curse." The guards hesitated, clearly terrified by the magical energies visibly coursing between Diana and Balthazar. One finally found his courage, rushing forward to grab Diana's arm and pull her away from the transforming Highland warrior. The moment the guard touched her, something shattered within Diana. A barrier, a limitation she had never known existed. Power exploded outward from her body in a visible wave of silver-blue energy. The guard was thrown backward as if struck by lightning, colliding with a tree trunk and crumpling to the ground, unconscious. Hammond and his remaining men froze in shock. Diana stood slowly, silver light coursing over her skin like liquid moonlight. Her eyes, normally green, now glowed with the same silver radiance. "What are you?" Hammond whispered, fear finally penetrating his arrogance. Diana didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The power flowing through her was beyond her control or understanding, acting on instincts deeper than conscious thought. She raised her hands, and another wave of energy pulsed outward, striking Hammond and his men. They collapsed where they stood, not dead, but deeply unconscious, as if their minds had simply been switched off. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the strange forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Diana turned back to Balthazar, who still knelt on the ground, the silver bolt protruding from his shoulder. The curse mark pulsed with chaotic energy. The transformation stalled in some halfway state between human and wolf. Diana knelt beside him, her hands still glowing with silver light. "I need to remove the bolt," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that startled her. Balthazar looked up at her with eyes more wolf than human now, recognition battling with bestial confusion. "Diana?" he managed, the words slurred as his mouth adapted toward a muzzle. "I'm here," she assured him. "Let me help you." Acting on instinct she didn't understand, Diana placed one glowing hand on the curse mark, the other gripping the silver bolt. Ancient knowledge flowed through her, knowledge of moon magic, of the balance between human and beast, of healing arts long forgotten by the world of men. She began to sing softly, words in a language she had never learned yet somehow knew perfectly, the old tongue of the Moonsinger lineage. As she sang, she drew the silver bolt out slowly, channeling the chaotic energy of the curse through her own body, transforming it, purifying it. Balthazar shuddered beneath her touch, caught between agony and relief as the silver catalyst was removed from the curse mark. When the bolt finally came free, Diana cast it aside and placed both glowing hands directly on the curse mark. The song reached its crescendo, her voice carrying through Blackwood Vale with supernatural clarity. Silver light spread from her fingers, seeping into the curse mark, battling against the silver-black corruption that had nearly consumed Balthazar's humanity. Lily watched in awestruck silence as her mother worked magic unlike anything she had ever witnessed. The clearing itself seemed to respond to Diana's song, the strange pool rippling for the first time, the black trees swaying though no wind blew, misty shapes gathering at the forest's edge as if drawn by the ancient melody. Finally, Diana's song faded, the silver light dimming as the last notes hung in the air. She slumped forward, exhausted beyond measure, catching herself on Balthazar's chest. The Highland warrior's breathing had steadied, his partially transformed body frozen in its current state, neither fully human nor completely wolf, but stable for the moment. "What happened?" Diana whispered. Her normal voice returned, the otherworldly power receded. Balthazar raised a hand, clawed but still capable of gentle touch, to her cheek. "Moonsinger," he said, wonder breaking through the pain in his voice. "You are Moonsinger. I don't understand." Diana struggled to make sense of what had just occurred, the power that had flowed through her, the ancient knowledge that had guided her actions, the song in a language she shouldn't know. "Legend among my people," Balthazar explained, his speech clearer than it had been before her intervention. "Women with Moon's blessing, healers of the divide between human and wolf, thought lost centuries ago." Lily approached cautiously, eyes wide with amazement and fear. "Mama, what did you do?" Diana reached for her daughter with trembling hands. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. I just knew somehow." She looked back at Balthazar, noting the silver-black veins had receded somewhat, though still present across much of his skin. "The curse?" "Not broken," Balthazar said, touching the mark on his shoulder, "but slowed, balanced for now." He looked toward the still unconscious Hammond and his men. "We must move. When they wake, hunt will intensify." Diana nodded, struggling to her feet. The extraordinary power had left her drained, her limbs leaden with exhaustion. "But where can we go? They'll track us again." Balthazar's gaze moved to the strange pool, now rippling gently, as if stirred by unseen currents. "Not if we take paths they cannot follow." He pointed toward the pool's center, where the ripples originated. "Portal, old magic, leads to paths between realms." Diana stared at the pool in disbelief. "You want us to go through the water?" "Not through. Beyond." Balthazar rose unsteadily, his partially transformed body moving with awkward grace. "Trust me, Moonsinger, this is way of our ancestors." Diana hesitated, looking from the mysterious pool to Hammond's unconscious form. The governor would not be merciful when he woke, especially not after witnessing her magical display. Whatever she had become, this Moonsinger Balthazar named her, Hammond would see only a witch to be burned. "What about them?" Lily asked, pointing to the fallen men. "Blackwood will deal with them," Balthazar said cryptically. "This forest remembers old violations. Hammond hunted my kind here generations ago." As if in response to his words, the mist at the forest's edge thickened, taking vague shapes that seemed almost humanoid, yet not quite. Diana felt ancient attention focusing on Hammond and his men, the forest awakening to old grudges long unpaid. A shiver ran down Diana's spine. "We should go," she agreed, no longer questioning the reality of magic after what she had just experienced and unleashed. Balthazar took her hand, his clawed fingers surprisingly gentle. "The way will respond to your blood. Moonsinger blood." Diana nodded, drawing her knife and making a small cut across her palm. Following instinct rather than instruction, she approached the pool and let 3 drops of blood fall into its dark surface. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The water began to glow with the same silver light that had emanated from Diana's hands during her magical working. The light spread outward from where her blood had fallen, illuminating depths that should not have been possible in such a small pool. Images formed and dissolved beneath the surface. Mountains, forests, stone circles, paths winding through landscapes that existed nowhere in the mortal realm. "Now we must step forward together," Balthazar instructed, moving to Diana's side with Lily between them. "Do not hesitate. Do not look back. Focus only on our destination, the Highland Mountains." Diana took a deep breath, grasping Lily's hand firmly in her left and Balthazar's in her right. "On 3, she said, summoning courage she didn't know she possessed. 1, 2, 3. They stepped forward as one, not into water as Diana had half expected, but into light, silver light that enveloped them completely, separating them from the physical world of Blackwood Vale. Diana felt weightless, formless. Her consciousness expanded beyond normal perception. Beside her, Lily's presence registered as a bright, pure flame of life energy, while Balthazar's dual nature manifested as intertwined currents of human and wolf essence, still battling for dominance, but temporarily balanced by Diana's intervention. Time lost meaning in this in-between place. They might have traveled for moments or hours as they moved along pathways of pure magical energy. Diana caught glimpses of other realms through veils of mist and light, places where massive trees housed entire civilizations, where giants walked open tundra beneath emerald skies, where creatures of myth and legend still roamed freely. Throughout this extraordinary journey, Diana felt guided by something beyond herself, ancestral memories activated by her contact with Balthazar's curse, showing her the way through paths her conscious mind could never have navigated. The Moonsinger blood in her veins recognized these ancient roads between worlds, remembered how to walk them safely. When they finally emerged back into the physical realm, the transition was so sudden it left Diana gasping. Cold air filled her lungs, colder than Ravenwood's winter, sharp with the scent of pine and stone and snow. They stood at the edge of a high mountain pass, granite peaks towering around them, dusted with snow that gleamed golden in the light of approaching sunset. "The Highland border," Balthazar confirmed, his voice stronger than it had been in Blackwood Vale. Here in his ancestral lands, even cursed as he was, he seemed to draw strength from the very soil beneath his feet. "Moon Pass. We crossed a day's journey in moments." Diana struggled to comprehend the distance they had traveled through magical means. "Hammond?" "Lost to us now," Balthazar assured her. "Few humans know the paths between realms. Fewer still would dare follow, even if they knew." Lily turned in a slow circle, taking in the majestic mountain scenery with wide eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Indeed it was. The Highland Mountains stretched in all directions, their slopes covered in ancient pines and firs that darkened to near black in the valleys. Snow-capped peaks caught the sunset's light, glowing rose gold against a deepening blue sky. In the distance, Diana could make out what might be structures, stone buildings perched on seemingly inaccessible cliffs. "My people's lands," Balthazar said, following her gaze. "Wolfcrag Keep lies beyond that ridge." "Your home," Diana said softly. Balthazar's expression darkened, the partially transformed features unable to fully hide his concern. "Was my home, before I led our delegation to the false peace talks, before the curse. Your people will welcome you back," Diana said with more confidence than she felt. "You're their alpha." Balthazar looked down at his clawed hands, at the silver-black veins still visible across his skin. "They may not recognize what I've become, and tomorrow night the full moon rises. Even with your Moonsinger magic slowing the curse, I will transform completely." The reminder sobered them all. Their journey had been extraordinary, but the fundamental problem remained unsolved. Balthazar's curse, the approaching full moon, and the looming threat of permanent transformation. "We should reach Wolfcrag before nightfall," Balthazar continued, visibly gathering his resolve. My second, Roderick, will have assumed leadership in my absence. He is loyal but cautious. Your presence, humans, from the lowlands, may not be welcomed. Will they try to harm us? Lily asked, fear edging into her voice for the first time since their magical journey. Balthazar shook his head firmly. No harm will come to you while I draw breath. You are under my protection. His gaze met Diana's, something unspoken passing between them. Both of you. The intensity of his gaze sent warmth spreading through Diana's chest, despite the mountain chill. In the short time since she had purchased his freedom in Ravenwood Square, a bond had formed between them, forged in shared danger, strengthened by mutual respect, and now complicated by the revelation of Diana's Moonsinger heritage and the deep connection it created with Balthazar's wolf nature. Then we continue, Diana said, adjusting her pack. Lead the way, Alpha of Wolfcrag. Balthazar's lips curved in what might have been a smile, though his partially transformed features made the expression somewhat fearsome. This way, Moonsinger. The path is steep but direct. They set off along the mountain trail, the sun sinking rapidly behind distant peaks. Diana felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, her body drained from the magical working in Blackwood Vale, yet her spirit invigorated by the revelation of her true heritage and the proximity of Balthazar's homeland. Whatever awaited them at Wolfcrag Keep, they were at least beyond Hammond's reach for now. The path wound steadily upward, skirting sheer drop-offs that made Diana keep a tight grip on Lily's hand. Balthazar moved with increased confidence, despite his partially transformed state, his wolf nature clearly at home in this wild mountain terrain. As they climbed higher, Diana began to notice subtle signs of habitation, stone cairns marking trail junctions, cleverly disguised lookout points built into the cliff faces, and occasionally the distant howl of what might have been wolf or something between wolf and human. Your people are watching us, Diana observed quietly. Balthazar nodded, scenting the air. Since we entered the pass, they know something is wrong with me, can smell the curse. Will they attack? Not without orders. They've gone to inform Roderick. Balthazar's expression tightened. We must hurry. Sunset approaches. Though he didn't explain the significance, Diana understood. In the Highland territories, transitions between day and night held special meaning for shapeshifters. Arriving after dark would be seen as suspicious, possibly threatening. They quickened their pace as much as the treacherous path allowed. Lily began to flag, the day's extraordinary events taking their toll on her young body. Without discussion, Balthazar lifted her onto his back again, carrying her with ease despite his own condition. The sun touched the western peaks, casting long shadows across the trail, when they finally rounded a bend and Wolfcrag Keep came into full view. Diana gasped involuntarily at the sight. Her visions had not done justice to the reality. The Highland stronghold was built directly into the mountain itself, a seamless blend of natural stone and ancient masonry that made it appear to grow organically from the cliff face. Multiple levels rose in terraced fashion, connected by stone staircases and arched bridges. Torches were being lit as twilight deepened, creating a constellation of warm golden light against the gray stone. At the highest point, a massive circular structure crowned the keep, a great hall with tall windows that gleamed like amber in the setting sun. The Hall of Alphas, Balthazar said, following her gaze, where my ancestors have ruled for 15 generations. Diana could hear the pride in his voice, and something else, longing, tinged with uncertainty. This was his birthright, his home, yet he returned transformed by enemy magic, accompanied by lowland humans, and racing against a curse that threatened to destroy his humanity forever. They had just started down the final approach to the keep's main gate when figures appeared on the path ahead. At least a dozen Highland warriors, armed with spears and short swords of gleaming metal that Diana suspected might be silver. At their head walked a man nearly as large as Balthazar, with a shock of red hair and a beard to match. His face was set in grim lines, eyes narrowed with suspicion. Roderick, Balthazar identified quietly. My beta. The Highland warriors spread out, blocking the path completely. Roderick stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. When he spoke, it was in the liquid syllables of Highland Gaelic, his voice deep and resonant with authority. Balthazar responded in the same tongue, gesturing toward Diana and Lily. The exchange continued for several tense minutes, growing increasingly heated. Diana couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear enough. Roderick was reluctant to allow them passage, while Balthazar insisted with growing intensity. Finally, Roderick switched to heavily accented common speech, apparently for Diana's benefit. "You return changed, Balthazar, cursed, with lowland humans." His gaze raked over Diana and Lily with open suspicion. "After our brothers died at lowland hands. You understand my caution." "I understand loyalty," Balthazar replied, his own voice taking on a commanding tone despite his transformed appearance. "These humans saved my life, Roderick. The woman is Moonsinger." A ripple of reaction passed through the Highland warriors, widened eyes, exchanged glances, murmured words in their native tongue. Clearly the term Moonsinger held great significance to them. Roderick's expression shifted from suspicion to disbelief. "Moonsingers are legend, lost to us generations ago. Yet one stands before you," Balthazar countered. "She slowed the royal curse, gave me time to reach home before the full moon." He drew himself up to his full height, impressive despite his hybrid state. "I am still Alpha of Wolfcrag, Roderick. Will you deny me entrance to my own keep?" A tense silence followed, the unspoken challenge hanging in the air between them. Then, unexpectedly, it was Lily who broke the impasse. She slid down from Balthazar's back and stepped forward, her small face serious in the fading light. "My mother saved him," she said clearly, looking up at the towering Highland warriors without flinching. "She used all our money to buy him from the bad men. Then she healed him. Then she made the silver light that helped us escape. She's very tired now, and we've come a long way. Please let us in." The simple childish plea seemed to affect Roderick more than all of Balthazar's authority. Something softened in the big warrior's eyes as he looked down at the brave human child. After a moment, he inclined his head slightly. "The child speaks with honest heart," he acknowledged. Then, turning back to Balthazar, "You may enter, Alpha, with your guests, but the council must meet tonight. Your return raises many questions." Balthazar nodded once, accepting the compromise. "Tonight, then." Roderick and his warriors parted, creating a path for them to pass. As they walked between the armed Highlanders, Diana felt their curious gazes, some hostile, others merely wary, and a few openly fascinated, particularly when looking at her. The word Moonsinger whispered through their ranks like wind through pine needles. They passed through the massive gates of Wolfcrag Keep just as true darkness settled over the mountains. Inside, the stronghold revealed itself to be even more impressive than it had appeared from without. Courtyards opened onto terraced gardens, though dormant in winter. Stone buildings rose in graceful arches and towers, their architecture both beautiful and practical. Everywhere, torches and braziers burned with clean, bright flames, providing both light and warmth against the mountain night. And everywhere were people, Highland clan members moving with purpose through their evening routines. Men and women both wore practical leather and wool garments, many adorned with distinctive geometric patterns that Diana assumed identified different family groups within the clan. Children ran through the courtyards, their laughter echoing off stone walls. Dogs that looked suspiciously wolf-like lounged near doorways or trotted alongside their masters. All activity halted as Balthazar passed, clan members stopping to stare at their returned Alpha and his strange companions. Some bowed their heads respectfully, others made subtle gestures that might have been blessings or wards against evil. News of their arrival spread rapidly, and by the time they reached the central courtyard, a substantial crowd had gathered. From a doorway ahead emerged an elderly woman, her silver hair braided in complex patterns around her head, her straight back and proud carriage belying her advanced years. She wore robes of deep green embroidered with silver symbols similar to the curse mark on Balthazar's shoulder, though these seemed protective rather than destructive in nature. "Elder Karina," Balthazar said with evident respect, "I return, though not as I left." The old woman approached without fear, her keen eyes taking in Balthazar's transformed appearance, the silver-black veins pulsing beneath his skin, the not-quite-human features. She spoke in Highland Gaelic, her voice surprisingly strong and musical. Balthazar replied briefly, then turned to Diana. "Elder Karina is our healer and keeper of old knowledge. She asks to examine you, both the curse and your Moonsinger blood." Diana nodded, too exhausted to object even if she had wanted to. Whatever might help. Elder Karina switched to common speech, her accent less pronounced than Roderick's. "Come, young moonsinger, bring your child. We have much to discuss before the council meets." Her gaze moved to Balthazar, compassion replacing clinical assessment. "And you, Alpha, must prepare. The moon rises full tomorrow night. We have little time." The significance of her words hung heavily in the air. Whatever answers they sought, whatever hope existed of breaking the royal curse, less than 24 hours remained before Balthazar would transform completely. After that, according to everything they had learned, his human consciousness would begin to fade, leaving only the wolf behind. Diana reached out impulsively, taking Balthazar's clawed hand in hers. "We'll find a way," she promised. The words meant as much to reassure herself as him. Balthazar's partially transformed features couldn't fully express the complexity of emotion in his eyes, but his gentle squeeze of her hand conveyed what words could not: gratitude, hope, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. Elder Karina observed the exchange with knowing eyes. "Come," she repeated more gently. "The journey has been long, and longer still before we reach its end." As they followed the elder through the winding pathways of Wolfcrag Keep, Diana felt the weight of destiny settling around her shoulders. In the span of 3 days, she had gone from village healer to fugitive to moonsinger of legend. Her ordinary life in Ravenwood seemed a distant memory now, replaced by ancient magic, Highland shapeshifters, and a race against time to save Balthazar from a fate worse than death. The Highland moon rose above the mountains, nearly full, bathing Wolfcrag Keep in silvery light that seemed to whisper of tomorrow's reckoning. In less than a day, they would discover if the Moonsinger's ancient power could truly break a royal curse, or if Diana had led her daughter into exile only to witness Balthazar's humanity slip away forever. Elder Karina's chambers occupied the heart of Wolfcrag Keep, a spacious cavern carved directly into the mountain's living rock. The walls held countless shelves of ancient texts, dried herbs hanging in bundles from the ceiling, and stones of various colors arranged in patterns Diana recognized as ritual configurations. A large hearth dominated one wall, its dancing flames casting the chamber in amber light and welcome warmth after their journey through the frigid mountain passes. Diana sat beside this fire, wrapped in a fur blanket that smelled of cedar and mountain herbs, watching as Elder Karina examined the silver-black veins that now covered most of Balthazar's exposed skin. Lily had finally succumbed to exhaustion, curled peacefully on a pallet in the corner, her small face relaxed in sleep for the first time since they had fled Ravenwood. "Royal magic," Elder Karina murmured, her aged fingers tracing the curse's path across Balthazar's chest with practiced precision. "Powerful but crude. They understand the mechanics of binding, but not the spiritual balance required." "Can it be broken?" Diana asked, the question that had haunted her since discovering Balthazar's condition. The elder's eyes, sharp despite her years, met Diana's across the room. "With traditional methods? No. The curse is too deeply integrated with his life force. Breaking it conventionally would kill him." She paused, studying Diana with unsettling intensity. "But you, Moonsinger, represent a different approach entirely." Diana shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny. "I don't even understand what a Moonsinger is. These powers manifested without warning or training." "Blood remembers what the mind forgets," Elder Karina replied cryptically. She moved away from Balthazar, selecting a leather-bound volume from a nearby shelf. The Moonsingers were once the balance keepers between human and wolf, between civilization and wilderness. They could heal the divide within shapeshifters, allowing perfect harmony between dual natures. She placed the book before Diana, opening it to reveal pages of ancient script and detailed illustrations. Women with silver eyes channeling moonlight through upraised hands, wolves transformed in mid-leap, circles of standing stones beneath full moons. For generations they lived among us as honored healers and advisors. Then came the Great Purge. Elder Karina's voice darkened. The lowland kings feared their power, labeled them witches. Hundreds were executed. The survivors scattered, hiding their abilities, marrying into normal families, their bloodlines growing thinner with each generation. Diana stared at the illustrations, recognition stirring deep within her. The postures, the rituals, they felt familiar somehow, as if she had performed them in dreams long forgotten upon waking. "You believe I'm descended from these women?" "I know you are," Elder Karina said with absolute certainty. "The power that flows through your veins, dormant until needed, is unmistakable. Your instinctive recognition of the curse, your ability to stabilize it temporarily, these are Moonsinger gifts." Balthazar spoke for the first time since entering the chamber, his voice roughened by his partial transformation. "My mother spoke of Moonsingers, said they were our counterparts. We embraced the wolf within, while they maintained the bridge between worlds." "Precisely," Elder Karina nodded. "Which is why a Moonsinger may be the only one who can break this particular curse." She turned back to Diana, her expression grave. "But it will require more than the instinctive power you displayed in Blackwood Vale. It will demand conscious control, deep understanding, and—" she hesitated, "a spiritual connection to the Alpha that transcends ordinary bonds." Something in her tone made Diana flush slightly. What kind of connection? Elder Karina and Balthazar exchanged a look laden with meaning Diana couldn't fully interpret. "The Moonsinger must link her spirit to the Alphas," Elder Karina explained carefully. "It is a profound joining, a soul bond that allows her to navigate the boundary between his human and wolf natures. Traditionally, such bonds were formed only between lifelong partners." The implication hung heavy in the air. Diana glanced at Balthazar, finding his ice-blue eyes, now rimmed with amber gold, fixed intently upon her. Despite his partially transformed features, the emotion in his gaze was unmistakably human and unmistakably complex. "There must be another way," Diana said, suddenly breathless. "There is not," Balthazar replied simply. "But I would not ask this of you, Diana. You have already risked everything to bring us here. This bond, it is permanent, binding until death. And beyond," Elder Karina added softly. Diana stood abruptly, moving to the far side of the chamber, mind racing. 3 days ago, Balthazar had been a stranger, a prisoner she'd impulsively saved from execution. Now she was being asked to bind her soul to his eternally, to break a royal curse. It was too much, too fast, regardless of the undeniable connection that had formed between them during their journey. "How long do we have?" she asked, changing the subject. "Until the full moon reaches its zenith tomorrow night," Elder Karina replied. "After that, the curse will complete its work. Balthazar's human consciousness will begin to fade. Within days, only the wolf would remain." The elder moved to a basin of water set beneath a crystal-lined opening in the ceiling. Moonlight filtered through the crystal, striking the water's surface and creating ripples of silver light that danced across the chamber walls. "For tonight, you must rest," she continued, sprinkling herbs into the moonlit water. "Tomorrow, if you choose to attempt the ritual, you will need all your strength. The path between realms is treacherous, especially for one untrained in Moonsinger ways." "Path between realms?" Diana echoed. "To break the curse, you must follow it to its source, the space between human and wolf where the royal magic anchored itself." Elder Karina dipped a cloth into the herbal water, approaching Balthazar. "For tonight, this poultice will ease the curse's advance, giving you a few more hours of clarity." As she applied the cloth to Balthazar's curse mark, he hissed in pain, then relaxation, as the herbs counteracted the silver-black vein's painful pulsing. Diana watched the process with a healer's professional interest, noting the specific herbs and application method for future reference, assuming they had a future beyond tomorrow night. A knock at the chamber door interrupted her thoughts. Elder Karina called out in Highland Gaelic, and Roderick entered, his imposing frame filling the doorway. His expression remained guarded, but some of the earlier hostility had faded, replaced by grudging respect. "The council awaits, Alpha," he said to Balthazar. "They would hear your account of what transpired at the peace talks." Balthazar nodded, rising fluidly despite his hybrid state. The herbal poultice had steadied him somewhat, pushing back the wolf's influence temporarily. "And they will hear it." He turned to Diana. "Will you accompany me? The council should know of your role in all this." Diana hesitated, glancing at Lily's sleeping form. "The child will be safe here," Elder Karina assured her. "My apprentices will watch over her. She will not wake before morning." After a moment's consideration, Diana nodded. "Very well. I should hear what the council has to say as well." Roderick led them through Wolf Crag's winding corridors, climbing steadily upward toward the keep's pinnacle. Highland clan members they passed bowed respectfully to Balthazar, despite his transformed appearance, then stared openly at Diana, whispers of Moonsinger following in their wake. The weight of centuries of history and legend seemed to press upon her shoulders with each step. They emerged finally into the great hall of alphas that Diana had glimpsed from outside the keep. It was a massive circular chamber with a domed ceiling open to the night sky, allowing moonlight to pour through. The nearly full moon cast silver radiance across a circular table of polished stone, around which sat 12 Highland elders, men and women of varying ages, all bearing the same proud, aristocratic features Diana had first noticed in Balthazar. The whispers ceased immediately as they entered, all eyes fixing first on Balthazar's transformed state, then on Diana. She lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated despite her exhaustion and the gravity of the situation. A white-haired man with a face creased by time and weather spoke first, his common speech heavily accented but clear. The Alpha returns changed, bearing the royal curse upon his flesh, with a lowland woman at his side. His piercing gaze settled on Diana. Elder Karina claims she is Moonsinger. Is this true, Balthazar? Balthazar stepped forward, drawing himself up to his full impressive height. It is, Elder Tormund. This woman saved me from execution in the lowlands, tended my wounds when all others would have left me to die, and used newly awakened Moonsinger powers to slow the curse's progress long enough for me to return home. A murmur ran through the council, some skeptical, others awed. Diana felt their collective assessment like a physical weight. "And what of our brothers who accompanied you to the peace talks?" asked a stern-faced woman, grief evident in her voice. "My son among them." Balthazar's expression darkened with shared pain. "Murdered, Elder Freya. The royal wizard poisoned the welcoming chalice with silver and nightshade. I alone survived due to my Alpha bloodline's resistance. The peace talks were a trap from the beginning, designed to eliminate our leadership and obtain a live specimen for their magical experiments." Outraged exclamations erupted around the table. Elder Tormund raised a hand for silence, then turned to Diana. "You are of the lowlands. Did you know of this treachery?" Diana met his gaze steadily. "I knew nothing until Balthazar told me. My village is far from the royal court. We common folk are often the last to learn of the king's true intentions." "Yet you helped him," another elder noted. "Why?" "Because it was right," Diana answered simply. "I'm a healer. I don't turn away those who need help, regardless of where they were born or what form they take." Her straightforward response seemed to satisfy several council members, though others remained skeptical. Elder Tormund leaned forward, studying her intently. "And now Elder Karina claims you are of Moonsinger blood, that you might break the curse that binds our Alpha between forms. What say you to this?" Diana chose her words carefully, aware that everything hinged on how she presented herself to these proud Highland leaders. "I know little of Moonsinger ways. My powers manifested only when absolutely necessary, without training or preparation. But I felt the curse respond to my touch. I saw visions of this place before ever setting eyes on it." She paused, meeting Balthazar's gaze across the chamber. "If there's a chance I can help him, I will try." "Even knowing what it would require?" Elder Freya asked pointedly. "The soul bond is not undertaken lightly, especially with one not of our kind." Diana felt heat rise in her cheeks, but maintained her composure. "I understand the gravity of what's being proposed. I haven't yet given my answer." Balthazar stepped forward again. "And I have not asked it of her. Diana Winters and her daughter have already sacrificed their home and safety for my sake. I would not demand more." His defense of her stirred something warm in Diana's chest, despite her exhaustion and uncertainty. Throughout their journey, he had shown her nothing but respect and consideration, even when the curse pulled at his humanity. Elder Tormund nodded slowly, then turned to address the full council. "Tomorrow night, the moon rises full. Our Alpha faces permanent transformation unless the curse is broken. We have until then to consider all options." He looked back at Diana. "The woman will be treated as an honored guest until a decision is reached. No harm will come to her or her child within these walls." With that pronouncement, the council session formally ended, though small groups of elders remained, speaking in hushed tones, occasionally glancing toward Diana and Balthazar, with expressions ranging from hope to suspicion. Roderick approached them as they prepared to depart. "Chambers have been prepared for you," he told Diana. Your daughter has already been moved there from Elder Karina's rooms. I will escort you." Diana nodded gratefully, the day's events finally catching up with her in a wave of bone-deep exhaustion. As they turned to leave, Balthazar touched her arm gently. "Thank you for standing with me before the council," he said quietly. "Few lowlanders would have shown such courage." Diana managed a tired smile. Few Highland Alphas would have defended a lowland healer so eloquently. Something like a smile flickered across Balthazar's partially transformed features, then faded as a spasm of pain contorted his expression. The silver-black veins pulsed angrily beneath his skin, the curse reasserting itself despite Elder Karina's herbal treatment. "You should rest," Diana said with professional concern. "The poultice is wearing off already." Balthazar nodded grimly. "The curse fights harder as the full moon approaches." He hesitated, then added more softly, "Whatever you decide about tomorrow night, know that I am grateful for everything you've already done, Diana Winters. You gave me the chance to return home, to warn my people. That alone is a gift beyond measure." Diana wanted to respond, but found the words catching in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, then followed Roderick from the hall, feeling Balthazar's gaze upon her back until they turned a corner and descended into the lower levels of Wolfcrag Keep. The chambers prepared for Diana and Lily were surprisingly luxurious. A spacious room carved from the mountain stone but made comfortable with thick rugs, tapestried walls, and a hearth that filled the space with golden warmth. Lily slept peacefully in a large bed piled with furs, having been transferred from Elder Karina's rooms without waking. Diana thanked Roderick, who nodded stiffly before leaving her alone with her thoughts. She moved to the window, a narrow opening in the thick stone that overlooked the moonlit mountains. The nearly full moon hung low in the sky, its silvery light casting long shadows across the snow-covered peaks. Tomorrow night, that moon would rise full, and Balthazar would either be freed from his curse or lost forever to the wolf. The decision before her was impossible. Bind her soul eternally to a man she had known for mere days, or let him lose his humanity forever. Under normal circumstances, the choice would be clear. No healer would hesitate to save a life if they possessed the means. But this was far from normal. The soul bond Elder Karina described went beyond any healing Diana had ever performed, beyond any commitment she had ever made, even marriage. And yet, there was something between her and Balthazar, something that had sparked the moment their eyes met in Ravenwood Square, a recognition that defied rational explanation. The awakening of her Moonsinger powers in his presence couldn't be mere coincidence. Diana pressed her forehead against the cold stone beside the window, closing her eyes against the turmoil of her thoughts. She needed clarity, wisdom beyond her own limited understanding, but most of all, she needed rest. Tomorrow would bring its own answers. She had just turned toward the bed when something on the distant mountainside caught her attention. Movement where no movement should be. Squinting into the darkness, Diana made out a line of torches winding up the mountain path toward Wolfcrag Keep. Dozens of lights, moving with purpose through the night. Her heart sank with sudden understanding. Hammond. Somehow, impossibly, he had followed them from Blackwood Vale. Diana rushed from the chamber, heedless of her exhaustion, seeking someone to warn. She collided with Roderick in the corridor outside, nearly bouncing off his massive frame. "Torches!" she gasped, pointing toward her window. "On the mountain path, many of them." Roderick's expression hardened instantly from surprise to battle readiness. "Stay with your daughter," he commanded, already turning to sound the alarm. Diana grabbed his arm, stopping him momentarily. "It's Hammond, the governor I told you about. He must have followed us somehow from Blackwood Vale." "Impossible," Roderick growled. "The paths between realms cannot be followed by ordinary humans." "Hammond isn't ordinary," Diana insisted. There was something strange about him even in Blackwood. He didn't fear the forest as his men did, and he worked with the royal wizard. Perhaps he has magical assistance. Roderick considered this grimly, then nodded. "Return to your chambers. Bar the door. I will alert the Alpha and assemble our warriors." Diana hurried back to her room, checking first that Lily still slept undisturbed. The girl had an uncanny ability to sleep through chaos, a blessing under the circumstances. After securing the heavy wooden door, Diana returned to the window, counting the approaching torches with growing alarm. At least 30, possibly more hidden by the mountain's contours. Too many for a mere search party. This was an assault force. A soft knock at her door startled her. "Who's there?" she called cautiously. "Balthazar," came the reply, his voice strained but recognizable. Diana unbarred the door quickly, opening it to find the Highland Alpha looking worse than when she'd left him after the council meeting. The silver-black veins pulsed visibly across his skin, and his features had shifted further toward wolf, his jaw elongated, ears slightly pointed, eyes more gold than blue now. "Hammond," he stated without preamble. "He followed you." "Us," Diana corrected. "But how? The magical path should have been impossible for him to trace. Not if he carries royal magic himself." Balthazar entered the room, moving to the window to study the approaching forces. "My warriors are mobilizing, but we are weakened. Many of our strongest fighters died at the false peace talks." Diana joined him at the window, the gravity of their situation settling over her like a physical weight. "This is my fault. I led him here." "No," Balthazar said firmly. "Hammond serves the royal wizard. They want what they have always wanted, to study our kind, to harness our abilities for their own purposes. They would have found Wolfcrag eventually." He turned to face her fully, his transformed features unable to hide the intensity of his gaze. "But their timing is deliberate. They know the full moon rises tomorrow. They know what will happen to me." "How could they know that?" "The royal wizard created the curse. He knows its progression better than anyone." Balthazar's clawed hands clenched in frustration. "Hammond is merely the hound sent to retrieve the specimen." The clinical description chilled Diana to the bone. "What will you do?" "What I must. Defend my people." Balthazar's gaze moved to Lily's sleeping form, his expression softening momentarily. "Your daughter will be taken to the inner sanctum with the other children. You should go with her." Diana shook her head firmly. "I'm a healer. If there's going to be fighting, I'll be needed." Balthazar started to object, then seemed to recognize the determination in her eyes. "Very well, but stay with Elder Karina. The healing chambers will be safer than the battlements." A horn sounded somewhere deep in the keep, 3 long, mournful notes that echoed through the stone corridors. Balthazar straightened at the signal, turning toward the door. "I must join my warriors," he said. Then, with surprising gentleness, despite his increasingly bestial appearance, he added, "Whatever happens tonight, Diana Winters, know that you brought light to my darkest hour. For that alone, I will be forever in your debt." Before Diana could respond, he was gone, moving with predatory grace through the corridors of Wolfcrag Keep toward whatever battle awaited. She stood frozen for a moment, his words echoing in her mind, then sprang into action. If Hammond and his forces were attacking the keep, there would be wounded who needed her skills. Diana gathered her healing supplies and gently woke Lily, explaining the situation as calmly as she could. The girl, showing resilience beyond her years, nodded solemnly and prepared to be taken to the inner sanctum with the other children. An apprentice healer arrived moments later to escort her, leaving Diana free to make her way to Elder Karina's chambers. The keep had transformed in the short time since the alarm sounded. Warriors moved purposefully through the corridors, carrying weapons and donning leather armor. Some had partially shifted, displaying claws, sharpened teeth, or heightened musculature, controlled transformations that enhanced their fighting abilities without surrendering to the wolf completely. Diana found Elder Karina's healing chambers already prepared for casualties, pallets arranged along the walls, herbs and poultices laid out for quick access, water heating over the fire. The elder herself moved with surprising agility for her years, directing younger healers in their preparations. "You've come to help," she noted as Diana entered, not a question but an acknowledgement. "Good. We will need every skilled hand before the night is through." "How many warriors can Wolfcrag field?" Diana asked, setting down her supplies. 200 at full strength, Elder Karina replied grimly. "But we lost 30 of our best at the false peace talks. Another 50 patrol our borders and cannot be recalled in time." She glanced toward the chamber's entrance, where the sounds of preparation echoed from throughout the keep. "Perhaps 120 stand ready tonight." "Against 30 of Hammond's men? Those seem like favorable odds." Elder Karina's expression darkened. "Were they merely men, yes, but I have sensed the approach of darker things. The royal wizard would not send ordinary soldiers against a Highland stronghold." Before Diana could ask for clarification, the first sounds of battle reached them, shouts, the clash of metal on metal, and something else. Howls of pain that raised the hair on Diana's neck. The first casualties arrived moments later, Highland warriors with wounds unlike any Diana had seen before, deep burns that pulsed with sickly green light, flesh turned gray and necrotic around puncture wounds, eyes clouded with unnatural cataracts after exposure to some kind of alchemical powder. "Royal magic!" Elder Karina spat as they worked side by side to treat a young warrior whose arm had nearly dissolved where a strange liquid had splashed against it. "They fight with corrupted elements, weapons designed specifically to harm our kind." Diana applied poultices and bandages mechanically, her healer's training taking over while her mind raced. If Hammond had brought magically enhanced weapons targeting shapeshifters, Balthazar, already weakened by the curse, would be in grave danger. The thought sent cold fear spreading through her chest. Hours passed in a blur of blood and bandages. The fighting outside seemed to ebb and flow, sometimes drawing closer to the healing chambers, sometimes receding toward the keep's outer defenses. Diana lost track of time, focused entirely on the wounded brought before her. She worked alongside Elder Karina and the other Highland healers, her lowland techniques complementing their traditional methods in ways that seemed to surprise them. A particularly grievous case, a female warrior with a chest wound that glowed with that same sickly green light, finally brought Diana to her knees with exhaustion. She had poured everything into stabilizing the woman, using techniques she hadn't known she possessed until that moment. "Rest," Elder Karina commanded, seeing Diana sway with fatigue. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." Diana nodded weakly, moving to a quiet corner of the chamber and leaning against the cool stone wall. Outside, the sounds of battle had diminished somewhat, though whether that signaled victory or defeat, she couldn't tell. Her answer came moments later when Roderick burst into the healing chambers, blood streaming from a cut across his forehead, his left arm hanging useless at his side. "The outer bailey has fallen," he reported grimly to Elder Karina. "We've retreated to the inner keep. They have weapons we cannot counter. Alchemical fire that burns through stone, silver dust that blinds any in shifted form, some kind of corruption magic that turns wounds septic instantly." "Hammond?" Diana asked, pushing herself upright despite her exhaustion. Roderick's expression darkened further. "Directing it all, but changed somehow. There's magic on him, in him. His eyes glow green when he casts spells I've never seen before." Diana felt sick. Her suspicions in Blackwood Vale had been correct. Hammond wasn't merely working with the royal wizard. He had been infused with magical power himself. It explained how he had followed them through the paths between realms, how he had organized this assault with such tactical precision. "And Balthazar?" she asked, dreading the answer. "Fighting at the main gate. The curse advances with each hour, making him stronger in some ways, more vulnerable in others." Roderick winced as Elder Karina began treating his injured arm. "He fights like one possessed, but I fear the wolf is gaining dominance. If the battle lasts until moonrise tomorrow..." He didn't need to finish the thought. If Balthazar transformed completely during battle, with the curse unbroken, they would lose their alpha forever, and possibly many lives in the process, as the uncontrolled wolf would not distinguish friend from foe. "I need to see him," Diana said suddenly, the decision crystallizing in her mind. "Impossible," Roderick objected. "The fighting is fiercest where he stands." Nevertheless, Diana gathered her resolve along with a satchel of healing supplies. "I stabilized the curse once before. Perhaps I can do so again, buy him more time." Elder Karina studied her with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. "You've made your decision, then? About the soul bond?" Diana met her gaze steadily. "I have." The elder nodded once, understanding everything Diana left unspoken. "Then you will need this." She pressed a small crystal vial into Diana's hand. "The essence of moonlight, gathered over 13 full moons. If you cannot complete the ritual tomorrow night due to the battle, this might give you enough power to attempt it even without the full moon's direct light." Diana clutched the precious vial, tucking it securely into an inner pocket. "Thank you." "I will guide you to the main gate through safer passages," Roderick offered, clearly recognizing the futility of trying to dissuade her. The journey through Wolfcrag's inner corridors revealed the toll the battle had taken. Wounded warriors lined the walls, those with lesser injuries waiting their turn for treatment. The sounds of fighting grew louder as they approached the main hall, and the air took on an acrid quality from the alchemical weapons Hammond's forces employed. "Through there!" Roderick indicated a massive doorway guarded by 4 Highland warriors in partial shift. "The main gate lies beyond. Balthazar holds the line with our remaining strongest fighters." Diana nodded her thanks, then stepped through the doorway into chaos. The main hall of Wolfcrag Keep had become a battlefield. The massive space, designed for clan gatherings and celebrations, now echoed with the sounds of desperate combat. Highland warriors fought with traditional weapons alongside their natural shapeshifter abilities: claws, enhanced strength, heightened reflexes. Hammond's men countered with their alchemical horrors, weapons that spewed green fire, crossbows loaded with silver-tipped bolts that emitted sickly light, vials of liquid that melted flesh on contact. And at the center of it all, fighting with terrible fury, was Balthazar. Diana's breath caught at the sight of him. The curse had advanced dramatically in the hours since she'd last seen him. His form was now more wolf than human. Covered in dark fur, face elongated into a partial muzzle, hands fully transformed into powerful claws. Only his eyes remained recognizably his, though now blazing gold rather than ice blue. They still held the intelligence and determination that marked him as Balthazar rather than mindless beast. He fought like something from ancient legend, tearing through Hammond's soldiers with savage efficiency, yet still directing his own warriors with strategic precision. The silver-black veins of the curse pulsed across his transformed body, seeming to both empower and pain him with each flare. Diana steeled herself and began moving around the perimeter of the hall, using fallen debris and overturned furniture as cover. She needed to reach Balthazar, to help him hold on to his humanity for just a few more hours until they could attempt to break the curse completely. She had nearly reached him when a familiar voice froze her in her tracks. The witch herself, how convenient. Diana turned slowly to find Hammond standing mere feet away, separated from the main fighting by a fallen column. The governor of Ravenwood had changed dramatically since she'd last seen him in Blackwood Vale. His eyes glowed with that sickly green light Roderick had described, and similar veins to Balthazar's curse mark spread across his face, but green rather than silver-black, pulsing with corrupt magical energy. "What has the wizard done to you?" Diana asked, unable to hide her horror. Hammond smiled, the expression made grotesque by the glowing veins beneath his skin. "Elevated me. Just as I will be elevated further when I deliver the Highland Alpha and the last Moonsinger to my master." "You know about my bloodline," Diana realized. "The wizard sensed it the moment you used your power in Blackwood Vale." Hammond took a step closer, his movements unnaturally fluid. A Moonsinger and an Alpha, together after all these centuries. The magical potential alone is worth more than gold. Diana backed away, her hand slipping into her satchel for a weapon. Any weapon. "You followed us through the paths between realms. The wizard's power made it possible, just as it makes this possible." Hammond raised his hand, green energy crackling between his fingers. "Come quietly, Diana, and I'll ensure your daughter remains unharmed. Resist, and I cannot make such promises." The mention of Lily ignited something fierce and protective within Diana. She felt the Moonsinger power stirring in her blood, responding to the threat against her child. Without conscious thought, she channeled it outward, silver light blooming around her hands, just as it had in Blackwood Vale. Hammond's eyes widened in momentary surprise before his expression hardened. "So be it." He thrust his hand forward, sending a bolt of green energy toward Diana. She raised her silver-lit hands instinctively, creating a shield that the corrupt magic crashed against in a shower of sparks. The impact drove her backward several steps, the opposing magical energies creating a deafening crack that momentarily drew attention from the surrounding battle. Diana had no training, no understanding of how to properly wield her Moonsinger abilities, but instinct and desperation proved powerful teachers. She pushed back against Hammond's magic, silver light streaming from her hands to counter his green corruption. "Balthazar!" she called out, knowing the Highland Alpha could hear her even across the chaotic battlefield. Hammond took advantage of her momentary division of attention, intensifying his magical assault. The green energy began to overwhelm Diana's silver light, pushing inexorably closer to her straining body. "Your power is untrained, undisciplined," Hammond taunted. "Mine has been carefully cultivated by the realm's greatest magical mind." Diana felt her strength flagging, the silver light dimming as Hammond's corrupt magic gained ground. Just as her shield began to fail, A roar of primal fury shook the very stones of the keep. Balthazar crashed into Hammond from behind, driving him into the stone floor with bone-crushing force. The governor's concentration shattered, his green energy dissipating as he struggled beneath the enraged Highland Alpha. "Diana!" Balthazar growled, her name barely recognizable through his transformed vocal cords. "Run!" Instead, Diana moved closer, her Moonsinger senses detecting the dangerous fluctuations in Balthazar's curse. The fight with Hammond was pushing him closer to complete transformation, the silver-black veins pulsing erratically across his fur-covered body. Hammond, despite being pinned beneath Balthazar's considerable weight, began laughing, a chilling sound devoid of humor or sanity. "Yes, fight me, beast. Let the rage flow. Embrace the wolf completely." Diana realized with horror what Hammond was doing, deliberately provoking Balthazar to accelerate the curse's progression, pushing him toward the point of no return before the ritual could be attempted. "Balthazar, stop!" she called, reaching out with both her voice and her Moonsinger energy. "He's trying to trigger the final transformation." For a moment it seemed Balthazar hadn't heard her. His claws dug into Hammond's shoulders, drawing blood that hissed and steamed with unnatural green light. Then, with visible effort, he loosened his grip slightly, struggling to maintain control of the wolf's fury. Hammond seized the opportunity, placing his palm against Balthazar's chest, directly over the curse mark. "The wizard sends his regards," he hissed, green energy pulsing from his hand into the silver-black veins. Balthazar's roar of agony echoed through the keep as the curse mark flared with blinding intensity. He recoiled from Hammond, his body convulsing as the foreign magic accelerated the curse's progression dramatically. Diana rushed forward without thought for her own safety, hands glowing silver as she reached for Balthazar. Hammond scrambled to his feet, preparing another magical attack, but a Highland warrior intercepted him, driving him back into the main battle. Diana reached Balthazar just as he collapsed against a stone column, his body racked with violent tremors. The silver-black veins now covered him completely, pulsing in erratic rhythm as Hammond's magical assault disrupted the curse's normal progression. "Hold on," Diana urged, placing her glowing hands on the curse mark. "Fight it, Balthazar. Stay with me." His golden eyes found hers, recognition battling against bestial confusion. Diana," he managed, the word barely intelligible through his transformed mouth. Diana channeled her Moonsinger energy into the curse mark, trying desperately to stabilize the chaotic magic as she had in Blackwood Vale. But Hammond's interference had changed the equation. The curse was evolving, adapting, becoming something even more dangerous. "It's different," she gasped, feeling the curse resist her efforts. "Hammond's magic has accelerated it, corrupted it further." Balthazar seized her wrist with a clawed hand, his grip firm but carefully controlled despite his agony. "The ritual," he growled. "Now, only chance." "But the full moon doesn't rise until tomorrow night," Diana protested. "Elder Karina said—" Balthazar shook his head sharply, cutting her off. "No time. Hammond's magic, changing everything, will be lost before dawn." The certainty in his voice, the clarity still present in his golden eyes, despite his nearly complete physical transformation, convinced Diana he was right. Hammond's magical assault had destabilized the curse, accelerating its progression unpredictably. They couldn't wait for the full moon. Diana's hand moved to the pocket containing Elder Karina's crystal vial, the essence of moonlight, gathered over 13 full moons. Perhaps not as powerful as the actual full moon, but their only hope under the circumstances. "We need somewhere safe," she said, helping Balthazar to his feet. His transformed body towered over her now, massive and powerful, yet he leaned on her as if she were the stronger of the two. "Somewhere we won't be interrupted." Balthazar nodded toward a small archway partially hidden behind a tapestry. "Inner sanctum," he managed through his transformed muzzle. "Sacred space." They moved together through the chaos of battle, Highland warriors instinctively clearing a path for their Alpha and the Moonsinger. Hammond's voice rose in rage somewhere behind them, ordering his men to stop them. But the fighting had become too chaotic, the Highland defenders too determined to protect their leader's retreat. The archway led to a narrow spiral staircase, ascending into the heart of the mountain. Diana supported Balthazar as best she could as they climbed, his massive frame dwarfing the ancient steps. The sounds of battle diminished with each turn of the staircase, replaced by an almost preternatural silence. They emerged finally into a chamber unlike any Diana had seen before, perfectly circular, with a domed ceiling open to the night sky, similar to the Hall of Alphas, but much smaller and more ancient. The walls were covered in carvings of wolves and humans intertwined in various ritual postures, illuminated by strange blue-white crystals that grew naturally from the stone. At the center of the chamber stood a circular pool of still water, reflecting the stars visible through the domed opening. "The first circle," Balthazar explained, his speech deteriorating further as the curse advanced, "where original bond between human and wolf was formed." Diana helped him to the edge of the pool, the significance of their location not lost on her. This sacred space had witnessed the very first shapeshifter transformations, the beginning of the Highland clan's unique heritage, and now it would witness either Balthazar's salvation or his final transformation. "What must I do?" she asked, removing Elder Karina's crystal vial from her pocket. Balthazar struggled visibly to maintain coherent speech, fighting against the curse's attempt to claim his mind as it had already claimed his body. "Soul bond ritual. Join spirits. Through the pool. You must guide me back from the wolf." Diana uncorked the vial, the liquid inside glowing with captured moonlight. "And this? Pour into pool. Will create necessary connection." Diana hesitated only briefly before emptying the precious moonlight essence into the still water. The effect was immediate and breathtaking. The liquid illuminated from within, transforming into what appeared to be liquid silver that spread until the entire pool glowed with otherworldly radiance. Balthazar moved to kneel at the pool's edge, his transformed body rigid with the effort of maintaining control. "Now, blood," he managed. "Both of us, into the water." Diana drew her knife, making a small cut across her palm without hesitation. Balthazar extended a clawed hand, and Diana carefully drew the blade across his pad, releasing dark blood that steamed slightly in the cool mountain air. Together they held their bleeding hands over the moonlit pool, letting their mingled blood fall into the glowing water. Where it struck the surface, silver ripples spread outward in complex, symmetrical patterns. "Now!" Balthazar growled, his voice barely recognizable as words began to fail him. "Look into pool. Find my human spirit before it fades completely." Diana knelt opposite him at the pool's edge, staring into the swirling silver depths where their blood had disappeared. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, gradually, images began to form beneath the surface. Not reflections, but visions. She saw Balthazar as he had been before the curse, proud, powerful, fully human, despite the wolf spirit that shared his soul. She saw his childhood in Wolf Crag Keep, his training to become Alpha, his hopes for peace with the lowland kingdoms. And she saw the royal wizard's treachery, the poisoned chalice, the curse taking hold as Balthazar fought to save himself while watching his brothers-in-arms die around him. The vision shifted, becoming darker, more chaotic. The wolf spirit grew stronger, the human consciousness diminishing as the curse tightened its grip. Diana could see Balthazar's human self fading, retreating before the curse's relentless advance. Without conscious decision, Diana leaned forward and touched the silver surface. Instead of feeling cool water, her hand passed through as if the pool were merely an illusion. Understanding instinctively what needed to be done, she reached further, plunging her arm into the silver depths, seeking Balthazar's retreating humanity. The moment her fingers found him, or rather, found the essence of who he was beyond physical form, something extraordinary happened. Diana felt herself pulled forward, not physically but spiritually, her consciousness separating from her body and entering the realm revealed within the pool. She found herself standing in a forest of silver trees beneath a moon impossibly large and bright. Before her stretched two paths, one leading deeper into the moonlit forest, wild and primal, the other winding toward distant mountains where lights of civilization glimmered. The crossroads of Balthazar's dual nature, made manifest by the ritual and the ancient power of the first circle. A massive black wolf stood at the junction, watching her with intelligent golden eyes. Behind it, barely visible in the silver shadows, was the fading form of Balthazar in human aspect, not his cursed, half-transformed body, but his true human self, handsome and proud as he must have been before the royal wizard's treachery. Diana understood instinctively that this was the critical moment, the wolf spirit ascendant, the human consciousness fading, the curse nearly complete in its work. She had to reach Balthazar's human aspect before it disappeared completely. "Balthazar," she called, her voice echoing strangely in this spiritual realm. "Come back to me." The wolf growled, positioning itself between Diana and Balthazar's fading human form. Not with malice, she realized, but with protective instinct. The wolf wasn't the enemy. It was a natural part of Balthazar, merely trying to survive as the curse forced an unnatural separation between the dual aspects of his being. Diana approached slowly, showing no fear. "I'm not here to harm either of you," she said to the wolf. "The curse is destroying you both by forcing this separation. You belong together, in balance." The wolf's posture relaxed slightly, though it remained wary. Behind it, Balthazar's human form flickered like a candle in wind, growing fainter with each passing moment. Diana reached out with her moonsinger senses, perceiving the magical structure of the curse for the first time in its entirety. The royal wizard's work was indeed powerful but crude, a magical wedge driven between the human and wolf aspects, forcing them apart rather than allowing them to coexist in natural harmony. Acting on instinct and ancient knowledge that seemed to flow through her moonsinger blood, Diana began to sing. The melody came to her without conscious thought, words in that same ancient language she had used in Blackwood Vale. As she sang, silver light gathered around her hands, and she carefully, reverently, placed one hand on the wolf's head and reached the other toward Balthazar's human form. The wolf whined softly, but allowed the contact, sensing Diana's benevolent intent. Balthazar's fading human aspect drifted closer, drawn by her song and the silver light of her moonsinger magic. When both wolf and human were connected through Diana's touch, she focused her will, her healing intent, and most importantly, her heart, on repairing what the curse had sundered. The silver light spread from her hands, enveloping both aspects of Balthazar's being, revealing the curse as a network of sickly green energy similar to Hammond's corrupted magic. Diana poured everything she had into her song, into the silver light flowing from her hands. She drew on her healer's training, her newfound moonsinger heritage, and something deeper still, the genuine connection she had formed with Balthazar during their journey. Respect had grown to admiration, admiration to affection, and affection to something she had been afraid to name until this moment: love. The realization crashed through her with the force of revelation. Somewhere in the chaos of the past few days, amid danger and discovery and desperate flight, she had fallen in love with the Highland Alpha. His courage, his honor, his gentle treatment of Lily, his respect for Diana's own strength. The soul bond ritual hadn't created these feelings. It had merely revealed what already existed in her heart. That recognition, that freely offered love, unleashed power beyond anything Diana had yet accessed. The silver light exploded outward from her hands, shattering the green energy of the curse like glass. Wolf and human, no longer separated by corrupt magic, rushed together in a blaze of golden silver light. Diana's vision whited out as the magical backlash swept through the spiritual realm. When her awareness returned, she found herself back beside the pool in the first circle, gasping as if she'd run for miles. Across from her, Balthazar lay motionless, his form still largely wolf-like, but no longer pulsing with the silver-black veins of the curse. "Balthazar?" she whispered, fear clutching at her heart. Had she failed? Had the curse been broken too late? For several agonizing heartbeats he didn't move. Then slowly he stirred, raising his head to look at her with eyes that were once again the clear ice blue of his human aspect, though still set in his transformed face. "Diana," he said, her name perfectly clear despite his wolf-like muzzle. "You did it." Relief flooded through her, so powerful she nearly collapsed. The curse? Broken. Balthazar sat up, examining his still transformed body with wonder rather than horror. But the transformation remains. "I don't understand," Diana said, confusion replacing relief. "If the curse is broken, shouldn't you return to human form?" Balthazar shook his head, a surprisingly human gesture despite his bestial appearance. "The curse prevented me from controlling my transformations, forced the wolf to dominate completely. Now the choice is mine again." As if to demonstrate, he concentrated briefly, and his features shifted, becoming slightly more human, though still recognizably hybrid. "Full control will return with time and practice." Diana stared in amazement. "You can choose your form now? Any form between human and wolf?
Yes. Balthazar's lupine features formed what was unmistakably a smile. A gift rather than a curse. Perfect balance between human and wolf thanks to you. He reached for her hand, clasping it gently between his massive clawed ones. The soul bond is complete, he said softly. I can feel it, a connection between us that transcends physical form. Diana felt it too, a warm golden thread linking her spirit to his, allowing her to sense his emotions, his physical state, the harmonious balance now established between his human and wolf natures. Before she could respond, the chamber door burst open. Diana turned, expecting Highland warriors with news of the battle, but instead found Hammond standing in the archway, his body pulsing with that same sickly green energy, his face contorted with rage. "What have you done?" he snarled, taking in Balthazar's transformed yet clearly self-possessed state. Balthazar rose to his full height, an imposing sight even before his transformation, now truly formidable. "She broke the curse, Hammond. Your master's work has failed." "Impossible!" Hammond thrust his hands forward, green energy crackling between his fingers. "The wizard assured me no power could undo his binding." "No ordinary power, perhaps," Diana said, rising to stand beside Balthazar. "But he didn't account for Moonsinger magic, or for the power of choice freely made." Hammond's face twisted with hatred and fear. "Then I'll bring him both of you. He can study how you broke the curse while he designs a stronger one." The corrupt magic around his hands intensified, preparing to strike. Before he could release his attack, Balthazar moved with supernatural speed, crossing the chamber in a blur of motion. Hammond barely had time to redirect his magical energy before the Highland Alpha was upon him, one clawed hand closing around the governor's throat. "Your master isn't here to protect you now," Balthazar growled, lifting Hammond effortlessly. "And you've attacked my home, threatened my people, and endangered the woman who saved me. Give me one reason why I shouldn't end you where you stand." Hammond struggled in his grasp, the green energy flickering erratically around his body. "Kill me, and the wizard will send others," he choked out. "More powerful than me." "Let him," Balthazar replied with cold certainty. "We'll be ready." Diana stepped forward, placing a hand on Balthazar's arm. "Wait," she said quietly. "He's not worth tainting your victory with more bloodshed." Balthazar glanced at her, internal conflict visible in his eyes despite his transformed features. Through their new bond, Diana could feel his rage, his protective instinct demanding Hammond's life as punishment for the threat he posed. But she could also sense his deeper nature, the justice and honor that made him a true alpha. After a tense moment, Balthazar lowered Hammond to the ground, though he maintained his grip on the man's throat. "Your life is spared," he said coldly. "Not for your sake, but for hers. You will return to your master with a message. The Highland clans are not his laboratory subjects. Any further attempts to curse or study our kind will be met with the full force of our vengeance." Hammond's eyes bulged with fear and hatred, but he nodded jerkily, unable to speak with Balthazar's claws still at his throat. "And one more thing," Balthazar added, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "Diana Winters and her daughter are under my personal protection. If any harm comes to them, any harm at all, there will be nowhere in this world you can hide from me. Do you understand?" Again, Hammond nodded. Balthazar released him with a slight shove, sending the governor stumbling back toward the chamber entrance. "Go," Balthazar commanded. "Take what remains of your forces and leave Highland territory. You have until sunrise. After that, my warriors hunt any lowlanders still within our borders." Hammond straightened his coat with shaking hands, the green energy around him dimmed but not extinguished. "This isn't over," he spat. "The royal wizard will not accept failure." "Neither do I," Balthazar replied simply. With one last hate-filled glance at Diana, Hammond turned and fled the chamber, his footsteps echoing down the spiral staircase as he descended. The moment he was gone, Balthazar turned to Diana, his posture relaxing from battle readiness to something approaching normal. "Are you all right?" Diana nodded, suddenly aware of her bone-deep exhaustion now that the immediate danger had passed. "Just tired. The ritual took more than I expected." "The soul bond demands much from both participants," Balthazar agreed, steadying her with a gentle hand when she swayed slightly. "It will take time to adjust to the connection between us." Diana looked up at him, studying his transformed features with newfound appreciation. Even in this hybrid state, perhaps especially in this state,
He was magnificent, powerful yet gentle, fierce yet controlled, the perfect balance of human and wolf that the royal wizard had sought to destroy. "I should find Lily," she said, remembering her daughter with a pang of guilt for leaving her so long. "She's safe," Balthazar assured her, and Diana realized he must have received reports about the inner sanctum's security, even in the midst of battle. "But yes, we should both go. My warriors will want to know their alpha has returned to them fully." As they descended the spiral staircase together, Diana felt the golden thread of their connection pulsing with shared purpose and unspoken emotion. The soul bond had transformed them both in ways she was only beginning to understand. Whatever came next, Hammond's inevitable return, the royal wizard's continued interest, the challenges of integrating into Highland society, they would face it together. The battle had ended during their time in the First Circle. Hammond's remaining forces had retreated upon seeing their leader flee, many abandoning their weapons in their haste to escape the Highland warriors' pursuit. Wolfcrag Keep had suffered damage to its outer defenses, but the inner structures remained largely intact. Most importantly, casualties had been fewer than feared. Highland shapeshifters healed quickly, and Diana's presence in the healing chambers had saved many who might otherwise have succumbed to the corrupt magic of Hammond's weapons. Lily rushed into Diana's arms the moment she entered the Great Hall, babbling excitedly about how she had helped Elder Karina prepare healing poultices during the battle. The girl showed no fear of Balthazar's transformed appearance, clearly having adapted to the strange new world they inhabited with the resilience of childhood. As dawn broke over the Highland Mountains, casting golden light through the hall of Alphys's domed ceiling, Balthazar stood before his assembled clan, Diana and Lily at his side. In his powerful hybrid form, neither fully human nor completely wolf, but a perfect integration of both, he addressed his people with renewed authority and purpose. "The royal curse has been broken," he announced, his voice carrying easily through the hall despite its bestial timbre. "Thanks to Diana Winters, Moonsinger returned to us after generations lost. The bond between us has been forged in the First Circle, witnessed by ancestors, and approved by the spirits of Wolf and Mountain." A murmur of appreciation ran through the gathered Highlanders. Elder Karina, standing at the front of the assembly, nodded in solemn approval. "Hammond and the royal wizard will return," Balthazar continued. "Of that we can be certain. But we will be ready. No longer will we hide in our mountain stronghold, hoping to be left in peace. We will strengthen alliances with other shapeshifter clans. We will establish our own diplomatic connections with sympathetic lowland nobles. And we will make it clear that while we desire peace, we are fully prepared for war." The Highland warriors roared their approval, many shifting partially to express their enthusiasm in the way of their kind, with flashing eyes, extended claws, and teeth bared in fierce grins. "As for Diana and Lily Winters," Balthazar's voice softened slightly as he turned to the two lowlanders who had changed everything. "They are now part of our clan by right of bond and blood. They will be accorded all respect and protection due to the family of the Alpha." Diana felt a blush rise to her cheeks at the public acknowledgement of their bond, but she stood tall beside Balthazar, one hand on Lily's shoulder. Through their connection, she could sense his pride, his joy, and his lingering concern for the challenges that still lay ahead. As the assembly dispersed to begin rebuilding and preparing for whatever the future might bring, Balthazar led Diana and Lily to a quiet balcony overlooking the Highland Mountains. The rising sun gilded the snow-capped peaks, turning them to fire and gold against the clear morning sky. "Is this our home now?" Lily asked, peering over the stone railing with childish wonder at the vast landscape spread before them. Balthazar knelt to her level, his massive hybrid form somehow managing to appear gentle rather than frightening. "If you wish it to be," he said seriously, "the choice is yours and your mother's." Lily considered this with the directness of childhood. "I think I'd like that. There's so much to learn here, and the other children have promised to teach me how to track like they do." She skipped back inside, apparently satisfied with this resolution and eager to begin her new Highland education. Diana watched her go with a mixture of relief and amazement at her daughter's adaptability. "Children accept change more readily than adults," Balthazar observed, rising to stand beside Diana at the balcony's edge. "Though you have shown remarkable adaptability yourself, Moonsinger." Diana smiled at the title, no longer foreign but a recognized part of her identity. 3 days ago, I was a village healer worried about having enough firewood for winter. Now I'm soul bonded to a Highland Alpha in a mountain fortress, with magical powers I barely understand. Regrets? Balthazar asked quietly. And through their bond, Diana sensed his genuine concern, his willingness to accept whatever answer she gave. She turned to face him fully, taking in his transformed appearance, the powerful hybrid form that now represented his true self, neither human nor wolf, but both in perfect harmony. Her hand reached up to touch his face, fingers tracing the contours that were at once alien and utterly familiar. "None," she said simply, the word carrying all the emotion, all the certainty, that had led her to choose the soul bond despite its permanent nature. "This is where I belong, where we both belong." Balthazar covered her hand with his much larger one, his touch gentle despite his claws. Through their bond flowed everything words could not adequately express: gratitude, admiration, protection, and yes, love. Not a love born of magical compulsion, but one that had grown naturally from respect and shared purpose, now strengthened and deepened by the soul bond, but not created by it. "The royal wizard will come for us eventually," Diana said, acknowledging the shadow that still hung over their future. "Hammond was just the beginning, and we will face him together," Balthazar replied with quiet confidence. "Moonsinger and Alpha, as it was in the ancient days, as it was meant to be." As the Highland sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the mountain valleys, Diana leaned against Balthazar's solid presence, feeling for the first time in years the sense of coming home. Whatever trials awaited them, Hammond's return, the royal wizard's continued schemes, the challenges of integrating lowland and highland customs, they would face them together, bound by choice as much as by magic. The curse that had been meant to destroy had instead created something new and powerful, a partnership that bridged worlds, a bond that balanced opposing forces, and a love that defied the boundaries between human and wolf, between lowland and highland, between past and future. And in that moment, as the golden thread of their connection hummed with shared purpose and mutual strength, Diana knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. This was only the beginning of their story, a story of curse and cure, of division and unity, of loss and finding, a story that would echo through the Highland Mountains for generations to come, the story of the Moonsinger and her Wolf King.